and welcome to episode 3 of the third season of, I was going to say Sopranos. I don't know why Sopranos. It's not the fucking Sopranos. This is Les Oderants. Welcome to Les Oderants. I'm Dan, and I am, as always, joined by James, Ben, and Fliss. Say hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
No, well, you waited till they'd finished, didn't you, James, to give it the old hello. True story about the Sopranos. It's about the only TV show that my wife and I ever actually agreed on, and we had our wedding tables named after Sopranos characters, and my best man got in touch with James Gandolfini, who was obviously still alive at the time, via his agent. And James Gandolfini was on holiday, but went and got a sort of portrait photo done, signed it, and FedExed it directly to my best man. And so I've got a signed photo of James Gandolfini wishing me and Lisa well on our wedding day. How mental is that?
What a legend.
That's so cute.
Yeah, I wish it was The Sopranos, but it's not. It's fucking Les Oderants. Right. So this week I want to start with a little bit of something slightly different, because many of you will know that Fliss and I are actively involved in perfume Facebook groups and such, and there was a meetup scheduled yesterday, although by the time this goes out it will be a week or so ago. And so Fliss and I met up with a bunch of other people in London and marauded around Harrods and various other shops, indeed. And there is no photograph.
We marauded so badly in Jovoy that they locked us in and indeed out at the same time.
Yes.
So there was like half of us in.
Yeah, they wouldn't let me
and
in
half of us out.
because you'd already got yourself locked out by that time.
The panic in the eyes. And I think that somebody should have honestly just gone to them and said, it's okay, we're all frag heads and we're not going to nick anything.
We're not going to steal all your perfumes.
The panic was real. It was, bless them.
Why, how many people are we talking?
It was about 20.
Wow.
Yeah, there was quite a few.
There was a lot.
But me and my mate Dave, and slightly bizarrely, my eldest daughter got the train down yesterday because Anna, my daughter, was at a loose end.
If I had a shop, I just want to say I would lock Dave out.
Yeah, fucking right. He's dodgy as fuck, Dave. Shout out to Dodgy Dave. So anyway, we got the train down there and we spent a load of time marauding largely around Harrods, but then several other stores, including Fortnum and Mason, Jovoy. I guess people went to Les Senteurs.
So, the dregs that were still there went to Les Senteurs at like 4 o'clock. It was a long day for some people. It really was.
So I went to go and get a sandwich outside Fortnum and Mason and wandered directly past the Santa Maria Novella little boutique. It's not even a boutique. It's almost like the size of one of those tiny tobacconists. And I just went in. I was like, fuck it, yeah, no, I'll Melograno, please. And I just bought it. So pleased to announce one of my purchases was a 50 ml of the Melograno, which, James, you have been quite rightly banging on about for some time, and it's just fucking magnificent. And the other thing I bought was Eau de Californie by Celine, which is lovely, a sort of Palo Santo-ish thing. And it's funny, I remember, by the way, James, you saying that people don't know what Palo Santo smells like. Nor do I, but I've got this now and the Carna Palo Santo, and there's a very definite connection between the two, which I'm assuming is what a Palo Santo sort of fragrance note smells like. That would...
Ever since James sent us that Palo Santo material, I don't think I can ever forget what it smells like. It was pungent as all shit, wasn't it? It made my living room smell like that for about a month.
Mm-hmm. I'd just say
it doesn't smell like that in perfume.
The Carna,
I don't know.
The Carna Palo Santo is just a lovely fragrance. You know, irrespective of like whether I think it's that brilliant, like a composition and stuff. I just think it's just a happy, nice smelling, warm perfume. But to me, the reason that it's nice is because it doesn't smell of Palo Santo.
That may well be right.
But by the same rule, Palo Santo it's a complicated relationship that I have with it, because it does have some facets of like beautiful stuff, but it also has that horrible minty latex weird thing that I believe, and like I really want to believe this, that most really good perfumers could like negate that or just completely get rid of it somehow, and you would just have something that resembles a real creamy, beautiful sandalwood, essentially. But I've spoken to quite a few professional and, well, like trained and untrained perfumers who I always bang the question to, do you like Palo Santo? And most of them say no. Most of them are like, I don't like it. I just dismiss it offhand because I can't work with it. I've never really tried, but I don't like the smell of it, so I just never have used it. And I'm like, that's interesting, because I sort of feel the same way. But I also kind of think I would want to challenge myself to use it and create a perfume that is great with it. There was one by, I forget what the brand's called, but they actually smelled of Palo Santo, and it was awful. And it was made by, I think it was made by like Bertrand Dachafour or somebody, like a really good perfumer. Yeah, it was made by like a really good perfumer. And it was clearly using the natural material because it dominated the whole composition. And I just felt like, of course you're using that. And it's the first perfume that I've ever smelled that smelled of Palo Santo. Like, yeah.
Well, the Eau de Californie does not smell overwhelming in that sense. If anything, it's reasonably tame. Mm-hmm. But I also tried night clubbing, which I know you've night clubbing is the one you do have, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It is fucking immense. I mean, I thought I'm actually wearing it on my left hand at the moment. And I thought I don't know, maybe Ben was going on about the smokiness of it. Someone was saying that the smokiness is so much that, it's a bit ashtray-like, you might not like it. But actually, it doesn't smell ashtray-like at all. I mean, it does have a sort of, I guess, a smoky burntness to it, but it doesn't stink like fucking 3-day-old ashtray or anything, which is what I was sort of expecting.
Well, what's beautiful about it is that it perfectly... it's very reminiscent of when you could smoke in clubs and things like that, and obviously, people
back in the 90s
of a certain age, exactly.
Well, foreshadow that shit.
Foreshadow, nice. But it's that thing of, if you were wearing a really nice perfume, or you maybe had an encounter with a lady friend or man friend, whatever you're into, and you maybe got some of their perfume on you, but you also had the remnant of like cigarette smoke smell. And also this kind of resinous, like green sort of galbanum, like shot through it with the orris butter, whatever, works really well. And then this like remnant of like stale tobacco on clothes doesn't sound great, but is great.
It doesn't.
Like it is wonderful. Magic. Yeah.
It's really good. So the other things, and I want to get some opinions from Fliss on Harrods in particular in a second, but I took my 16-year-old daughter into the Henry Jacques boutique, and I sat her down and I asked the sales assistant if Anna could try Mrs. Y, which is like their 2p oil, £6,000, and so they sort of ceremonially like dipped a fucking, and they give it to her, and she sort of sat there like just inhaling deeply with her eyes closed, and like I thought, fucking hell, she's going to say something really insightful, and she sort of she just opened her eyes and she turns to the SA and she goes, yeah, it's all right, that.
Is that picture you sent to us before?
Yeah. That's the,
because I honestly thought, I was like, why has she got a spliff in her mouth?
Yeah.
I saw the little card and I was like, I thought she had a reefer on the go. I was like, fucking hell.
Yeah, no, well, I mean,
I know you're doing that social experiment.
There's a good chance she probably does. But,
Oh, bless her.
yeah, so
She was great.
so
I loved her. She was just like, she was so cool about everything. She was, like I said, she was very Billie Eilish. She was just like, totally cool, totally relaxed. Like, but
What, she like, my dad dragged me down here.
But she was like really switched on as well. I just thought, oh my God, the kids are going to be okay. We talk about the kids.
Yeah, they are going to
fine.
be okay. So she did actually reflect on it a bit, and she said that it reminded her of getting made up and ready to go out, but like in a 1920s sort of style, which I thought was actually really insightful because it is a very grand kind of chypre perfume. It's very powdery, and you could sort of go, well, all right, applying makeup, 1920s. She's sort of got nostalgia. She's got event, and she's got kind of makeup. Yeah, she's very smart. And so the only other thing I wanted to call out was it was a very nice thing to meet a couple of listeners as well. That Fliss, I'm sure, will explain who they are, but shout out to them. Hello.
Yeah.
Fliss, tell us all about your experience.
There was so Tom. Is it? Who was there? There was the Sentiest was there. Love is a Scent was there.
Love is a Scent.
Love is a Scent.
She's a new person to me. I've met Tom before.
She makes beautiful photographic images. Very, very kind of what's the word? They are editorial
editorial,
very editorial, beautiful pictures, and she writes beautiful as well. She got a blog. Danielle from Perfume Haiku was there, and her husband was over for the weekend. They were both over for the weekend. Her husband had gone to a football match, and she just like said to me, "Oh, I'm going to be in town. Where should I go?" And I was like, "Funny, you should say that, babe, because we're all going to be out in town too." So she came along, and that was lovely. There was just a lot of people who just turned up for an hour or two or stayed the whole time. It was. I think. I mean, I just written a post about it actually. Well, what amazed me was not just how quickly everybody got into the what does this smell like, what does that smell like, but also how everybody was like checking in on each other. How's your mum? How's your dad? How's your job? How's things that have come up in between posts, and then going, and by the way, what do you think of that smell? And so there was a lot of like skin being thrust into each other's noses. It was it was lovely. There was just what do you think of this? And not that anybody needs approval to go, it's nice, but if you follow someone on Insta and you like their style, it's nice to then also get approval to go, yeah, actually you smell great. There was a lot of that.
So I don't know how many of you know Christian Callahan, but Christian is a big fucking guy.
So
he's
you think you're hench, Dan?
Yeah, I know. He's way more hench than me. He's an Essex doorman, and stood in the fucking perfume hall in Harrods. I literally had him come up and thrust his bicep in my face. He's like, smell my bicep.
There's a lot of bicep smell with
bicep.
Christian as well. Yeah.
You smell my fucking bicep.
He's an Essex bouncer and he's into perfume.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what was amazing is actually when you put us all together, there was this completely ragtag bunch, and Danielle had kind of got in touch with me earlier and gone, what do I wear? And I very sort of erroneously said, nothing, because you need all of your skin that needs to be available. And she thought that meant that we were all going to turn up naked. And it was like some kind of nudist meet.
I did consider it. Whenever anyone says, what are you wearing? My go-to answer is my Hamburglar outfit, which normally I would have gone for, but didn't yesterday thought I'd keep it on the down
But yeah,
low.
but my instant answer to that question was nothing. And I meant, of course, perfume.
Darling.
But she thought I meant like clothes. She was like, I'm not very fancy. And I was like, don't worry, none of us are fancy. And
fancy. Well, I am.
Well,
I'm quite
obviously,
fancy.
and your daughter with her £500 t-shirts that she wants.
Yeah.
But yeah.
One
is
got
the-
fuck all
is
to
the
do
right
with that
word.
one, I'm afraid. Yeah.
But yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And Fliss, I know that you had a somewhat surprising reaction
God.
to a perfume. Tell me, Fliss, tell me about your experience at the Henry Jacques boutique yourself.
So, Nick Nestros, who's on Insta, is Nick Chanel, and I, we're in a long-term swap situation. We swap shit, we talk about stuff, and we
That
send
sounded
each other
so
stuff.
we're in a long-term swap
No,
situation.
I meant like in
We're
perfume
locked
terms.
in.
This whole
to
conversation
the swap.
sounds slightly weird if you didn't know it was a perfume podcast, because you said me and Fliss are active on a Facebook group, active on a certain group. We thrust flesh into each other's noses.
Yeah.
Not sure if
You
we're wearing any
smell
clothes.
my
at this point.
bicep.
Smell my bicep. So we send each other like a lot of little, decants and stuff. And earlier,
Ben is not impressed,
No, he's not.
by the way.
Very
Ben
much
is like
earlier in the
deeply,
year, we did a big
deeply
kind
skeptical.
of like tuberose thing, and I was selling some stuff that ended up being a big swap, and he swapped with me the Roja Dove tuberose, which is now discontinued, and I'd said to him, I need it. I can't afford to buy it off you. What can I swap with you? Because it's my perfect tuberose. And it kind of hurt me to say it because I'm like, ooh, Roja Dove, I don't know about that. And he was like, well, this is. If that's your perfect tuberose, we can swap these things. And we swapped a load of things. He said, but just so you know, if you've not smelt Dentelle au Coeur by Henry Jacques, then you haven't met your perfect tuberose. And I was like, yeah, whatevs. And I kind of let it go. And in my head, I have this whole kind of thing about, like incremental amounts of money. How much? So you've got your Zara tuberose and your Dior tuberose, your Chanel tuberose, your Roja tuberose. How much better can they get? And, the Roja tuberose was fucking amazing. I was like, this is my perfect one. How much better can Henry Jacques really be? And I put a little thing on one of the groups, and somebody wrote back and went, it's not that much better. You're not missing out. And I was like, fine. Going to Harrods on yesterday, I had a little square of my skin that I'd set aside specially to spray the Henry Jacques in.
Skin square.
Yeah, a little six.
Actually marked out.
Literally
in pen,
marked out that's for Henry Jacques. And I got there. It was the first thing I did was like, hi, can I please have a couple of sprays of Dentelle au Coeur? Oh my God, I had to sit down. I thought I was going to come. It was so
sharp
good.
intake of breath.
I literally, there's a little banquette outside Henry Jacques, and I laid down on it and I sniffed my forearm for about 15 minutes, and my knees were weak. I couldn't get up, and I was like, "Fuck me."
That's some reaction to a perfume.
It was so visceral. It was just deeply, deeply, and I was really angry at Nick as well, because now I have to sell a lot of things, or a kid, or two kids, because I'm never going to smell it.
I have no
Kids
interest
first.
in
I mean,
buying
that's as easy, it's simple exchange that.
Yeah, I mean, Ben's right, although finding a buyer may be challenging.
Yeah, but I was just like, oh, and I had no comprehension, because I'd always really dismissed Henry Jacques. I think last time we went on a frag meet, I was a bit nose blind by that point because we'd spent some time downstairs. And so when I'd smelt some of the stuff, I was just like, yeah, it's all right. And because it was the first thing I smelt, my nose was totally fresh and clean, and I just melted. And it was the only thing I wore all day. I didn't test anything else. And we went to however many places, and I didn't test it. I didn't want to. It was like, this is the only thing I want to smell all day. It was phenomenal.
And did you find out how much it costs?
Yeah, it was about £730.
Okay. I mean, that's a lot of money.
That's more than a mortgage. That's more than our mortgage.
For how many mils? For how many mils is that?
75.
Not enough.
Yeah, 5,000.
And I went back into the lady because I was just like, well, maybe there might be samples, there might be, like, is this the smallest amount this comes in? Because if you do you do travel sets? And she was like, do you do really
Get the fuck out of here.
travels? And she was just like, no. I said, can I have another 2 sprays?
Into this little jar.
Yeah. It's actually cheaper for you to get the train anywhere you're going. You get the train via London, go into the boutique, apply the perfume for free, leave, go to your destination. That's cheaper than owning the fucking perfume.
It was genuine. And then
God, I thought
morning
this would be a bit triggering for James.
About it. I literally woke up going, oh my god, I need it. And like this monkey awake brain was like, Fliss, where is it? What, you can't. It's gone from your arm. You need it now. And I was like, I can't. Fliss, can't shut up, Fliss. I was like, the Fliss, you need it.
Crack.
I know
more. Gotta have more.
This is precisely why we often have this price and value conversation, because if you really loved it that much, Fliss, then you go ahead and save your pennies or sell some other perfumes or whatever, because okay, I mean, 730 quid, yeah, it's very expensive, and I go like balk at it and stuff, but at the end of the day, that's a lot more reasonable than fucking $6,000 and that kind of other shit. So that's almost attainable.
There's a lot of things in my collection that I could probably actually sell and maybe not make £700, but there's a lot of things that don't mean as much to me. But even just wandering around for the rest of the day, and the number of other frag heads that were out with us that went, oh, Fliss, you smell great. I was like, yeah, I know.
No, darling.
If another fraghead comes up to you and says, Jacques, you smell great, I'm like, yeah, fucking hell.
Well, literally as well, when you're on a busman's holiday, because I'm assuming you all smell great.
Yeah,
in your own ways.
Amazing.
And so to have the compliment coming at you, then that I would say, that's pretty worthwhile. And no, like I say, I actually think I've never tried any of those Henry Jacques at all, because one, you'd have to go to fucking London, which, I'm all right, thanks. And
they do post them out, by the way. I mean, if you phone up the boutique for no charge, they will put blotters in oil and then seal them in little baggies and post them out to you.
That's
so you
good.
can smell them.
Oh, that's good to know. Well, then maybe I'll do that. But again, I like the presentation of the brand, and I appreciate that there are these pot brands that are like, yeah, okay, that's great. And I like the flacon and stuff. And yeah, I can appreciate that's a quality sort of item. So I'm not just dismissing them, and they probably are good. Who are the perfumers? Do we know anything about the perfumers? Do they not reveal that shit because they're like, no, we don't.
No, I think it's literally the perfumer is listed as Henry Jacques, who I worry that's probably another Terry Montel or
Mr. Kipling,
Roger Pigeon. Yeah, Mr. Kipling. Yeah, exactly. I mean, he did make exceedingly good.
Well, this one makes exceedingly good perfumes. I genuinely haven't had that visceral reaction for such a long time. It was everything, my whole skin, everything, my hairs on my arms. It was phenomenal, and
You nearly came.
I did nearly come. I had to sit down and have a bit of a...
She came and told me that. And I was like, oh my God, this is so awkward for me.
I know. And your daughter was standing next to you. She was like, who is this woman?
Who's this fucking lunatic? And why is she talking about this?
Yeah, that fucking boncat was like a fucking water slide.
Wow, it was just awful. No, I'm perimenopausal, so it wasn't. It's fine.
Okay. I thought mine was too far. You topped it. Okay, moving on.
Well done. So Georgina, long-time sufferer of the show, but Georgina told me that I'm clearly a prude because anytime anyone says anything sexual, she can feel me blushing through the actual audio, which I thought was quite amusing.
She's amazing.
Yeah, I think she's wrong about that. Anyway,
you're right, Georgina. Right.
Fuck off. Right. So anyway, a great time was had by all. It were a right good laugh, and now Fliss has to spend
I don't know. I have to sell everything I own, including my children.
Which is fine. I mean, you get a nice perfume and better sleep.
Yeah,
so,
it's true, actually, isn't it?
Win-win.
Win-win.
Triple threat.
Yeah.
Ben, you've been sort of casually surveying the carnage here, okay? And I feel like you've got something to say about all of this bullshit, haven't you?
No, not really. I mean, I've never smelt any Henry Jacques. I have a weird sort of like, it's my contrary edge. Do you know what I mean? Like those sort of Harrods only, very expensive kind of brands. I mean, I'm not saying, I don't know, is Henry Jacques actually Harrods exclusive?
It might be exclusive, yeah.
Yeah, Harrods is the only place in the UK that you can try them.
I instantly sort of, my back sort of, I kind of get my back up against them and just think, fuck you, they're shit. And I'm not interested in sniffing. But it's ridiculous. It's based on literally nothing. So I would like to smell them at some point.
Would you be as opposed to a sort of, a kind of punk perfume brand that you could only buy if you knew a secret handshake to get into some dingy backwater club in fucking Soho for the same price, the same exclusivity, just a different route? Would you still be as opposed to it?
Yeah, absolutely not. And half of my life has been like that. Like exclusivity on the other end of the scale. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. You ain't cool enough to come in here,
deepest niche.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no, it's ridiculous, and I'm aware that it's based on nothing. But I would also change my opinion if I liked it. If I went and sniffed it and liked it, I wouldn't be like that stubborn to be like, oh no, it's rubbish. I just don't have a drive to go and smell them, really. Like they don't. No, that kind of exclusivity doesn't float my boat. But if I was there with you guys and I smelt them and I liked it, yeah, fair enough, and I'd be happy to.
Somebody actually smelled one of the Strangelove, and they ran up to me and they put their forearm, wasn't Christian, but they put their forearm in my face. Obviously, smell this, and it was Silence the Sea, and they were like, "It's amazing, I love it."
Yes,
I thought of you, and I was like, really? And they were like, oh my God. And they had the same reaction to Silence the Sea as I had to Deadly Cur. And it was I thought of you, Ben, because it was so interesting how people
maximum
are
wrongness.
I thought you were going to say they ran up to you and put their skin up your nose. I was like, did you press charges?
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Russell Brand, back off. Russ. So, I was, who was I talking to? Maybe it was Tav. But we sort of stood in front of the Strangelove ones, and he was like, no, don't like that one. Don't like Dead of Night, stinks of shit. Don't like Fall into Stars, stinks of shit. Don't like Melt My Heart, stinks of shit. I really like that Silence the Sea, though. Nice and fresh sea breeze. Like, what the fuck are you on about? I mean,
they all consistently stink of shit. What are you talking about?
Yes, exactly. They're all terrible. No, I still love that perfume. Yeah. Fall into Stars has been my visceral. It's not exactly brought me to climax, but certainly if I had a comparable
you understand
experience.
What I'm talking about, Dad, don't you?
Yeah. If I close enough to count, and yeah, that's been the one for me this year. Anyway, Ben. So Ben, if you're sort of not a big fan of Henry Jacques, which is understandable because you haven't tried them, what have you been smelling this week in your Christian Dior? In your exclusive Christian Dior jumper. Sorry, just exclusivity and all that, how much did that jumper cost?
I'm not talking about it.
Yeah, I just hate Henry Jacques. It's just so
there's no logic to the things I like and dislike. You've got to understand this.
Fucking Henry Jacques and all that, Ponzi exclusivity. He said literally wearing a genuine Dior sweater.
Yeah, throwing his Hermes bag over his shoulder, just like fucking
like
elitist bastards.
Charity
shop second-hand thing. This was this under shop.
What, the one underneath the? Okay, so basically you're confused.
Say money can't buy style.
It brings the median down.
I got my no, it's probably more than that. £700 sweater. Am I close? He's not even going to fucking bite.
I'm not talking about it.
Tell you, I'll swap it for an Henry Jacques Dendelecœur. What do you think?
Yeah. Actually, sorry, I can't keep going on about Henry Jacques, but I tried the Raphael Nadal for Henry Jacques perfumes, and they were actually really, really lovely. Really nice.
Is that like a really, really expensive?
Yeah, it's just a celebrity sort of collaboration.
Henry Jacques does celebrity, I mean...
Well, they've only got the one celebrity. They've done 2 Raphael Nadal ones, and they're sort of
weird,
grassy, fresh. It is a bit, but Raphael Nadal fronts that. What's that obscenely expensive watch brand? Is it Richard Mille?
Mille, yeah, he does. He does. His one is.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all pretty tacky, but his one is like horrible. It's like the Spanish flag colours and stuff. It's like, it's gross, man.
I think he's got a different one for every match, but they are incredibly light. So he literally plays wearing the fucking watches. It's just bizarre.
Yeah. Well, he has got that weird hammer arm that we've talked about before, hasn't he? That weird one, really developed arm.
I spent
He's got one little
in the presence of Dan's forearms, so... Don't talk to me about hammer arms.
Okay, yeah, but mine are, I think it's fair to say, mine are equally developed.
They are very much developed.
There's symmetrical gym.
Yes, symmetrical.
It's like you're wearing a Ben on each on each shoulder.
Double Ben, you cunts. Anyway, God, this episode has gone fucking nowhere near where it should have done. So Ben,
let's talk about
have you been wearing
again,
any?
Very seriously.
Yeah. Have you been wearing any perfume?
Yeah, and this is going to make this. It just gets worse. So I have, right? Because like this week, I've been really rough as arseholes, to be honest. I just had a really bad cold, and so I couldn't smell like anything. So, but of course, you got to wear something, right? So I've just been wearing the strongest perfumes I can find, and I've just realised after sitting here saying, I don't wear exclusive Harrod stuff, I was wearing Sergioff 1862 Polo, which was an exclusive fragrance handed out at a polo tournament.
Yeah.
And then later was a Harrods exclusive for a short period before being discontinued and now impossible to get.
Yeah. Ben, man of the people. Fucking...
I didn't get it from any of those places. I got it from the grey market.
Naturally, as does everyone. Nevertheless.
But it's fucking great fragrance though. It's strong as like arseholes. So that's why I was wearing it, to try and cut through the cold. And it's just like a big like leathery iris with a lot of patchouli as well. I mean, I suppose you'd call it like a spicy amber, and that would. It's a pretty good way to summon it up in a way. Like, it's spicy, it's a big amber, but it's also this like kind of raw leather and iris thing. It's nice. It's not when you think iris, you often think delicate, I think. There's an element of sort of delicate to it, like, either it's lipsticky or it's powdery, but this is neither of those. This is like rooty and like proper iris. It reminds me a little of the way Francesca Bianchi handles iris in that quite sledgehammery way. It's a bit like oily.
She handles everything in a sledgehammery way.
But you say this, that there's a I don't remember the name of, but a perfume haiku was wearing it, and it's iris, but it wasn't soft in any of the normal irisy ways. there was something really, it was rooty but green. It felt like it was like iris that the rain had just like, my mum used to grow a lot of irises in her garden, and when the rain fell in the mornings and you walked out into the garden, it was like a really heavy but thick iris scent that you don't normally get in perfumes. It was fucking full on. And Danielle she put like 2 sprays on her wrist, and she was just like, oh, this is the only iris I ever need for the rest of my life. I hate Henry Jacques. She just was just like...
But it's very fatty, isn't it? Like you say
really
about it being oily.
fatty, but
It's got
very
that, like,
earthy as
fatty.
well. Very earthy. There was no air in it at all, but it was amazing.
Another thing that people say, and this is a really good comparison because it does have a lot of similarities to this, but if you boil carrots, so to me, that smell of like that kind of... Yeah, I know that's a sort of sweet smell and kind of hard to kind of describe, but that sort of like smells quite carroty, which is interesting. And it's often paired with carrot seed, which actually is even a hell of a lot sweeter and doesn't really smell like carrots. It smells like carrot seed. But yeah, there's this interesting vegetal, fatty, earthy kind of thing to this quite beautiful floral thing. I mean, orris is fascinating, isn't it? Because it gives this kind of deep. It's like a stock or like a sauce or something. It gives it like body. It's like
bouillabaisse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bouillabaisse.
Exactly. That sort of like those kind of vibes, isn't it? That's what it does to perfume. It sort of makes it really substantial and perfumey, for want of a better term.
Nice.
This 1862 though, it's really interesting. Say it goes through like it smells so strange sometimes. It smells like cherry coke at times, and then like later into the dry down, it gets very patchouli. But the patchouli's that almost like vinyl, sort of like plasticky sort of scent that you get from patchouli. It gets quite rich, deep ambery vinyl plastic almost.
I'm sure I briefly owned a bottle of that, and my abiding memory of it was a sort of ginger note to it. Is there no ginger in it? I don't know. Maybe I got that wrong.
I mean, I can see that from the top because it's quite spicy on the top, and the spices are quite like amorphous and quite difficult to pin down, to be honest, because it's almost like the texture of the spice, but without actually a singular spice sticking out. Almost, it's a strange perfume. It's nice.
I'd sort of hoped it was going to be Xerjoff does Ralph Lauren polo green, but it's not that. Yeah, it's definitely not
apart
that.
from that. Yeah,
Cool. So, any other big hitters then? Whilst you've had what I assume to have been COVID.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if it's COVID or not, but it's lasting forever, and it makes me feel like shit. But anyway, enough of that. Yeah, I smell also. So this week I've been wearing Massimiliano Russian tea, which is pretty much my favourite like tea fragrance, and that's another big for a tea fragrance. You think most tea fragrances, they're quite effervescent and sort of floaty and light, but Russian tea is like heavy, ambery tea, sort of quite spicy, almost a little bit of leather in there as well. And the teas reminds me of that sort of Rooibos, kind of like red bush tea. It's got that sort of, I don't know, quite kind of ambery depth to it. It's good. I take it you don't like it.
No, I was just looking it up on my spreadsheet, and I've come across the husband notes, the husbeast notes, which I did.
Right.
And he said,
Dead chicken.
I like it. Foreign Christmas. Austrian Christmas, but more maybe Russian, I suppose. Like that song by Bing Crosby and David Bowie, Rubber Bum Hole, Rap-a-pap-pap.
Rubber bum hole.
Rubber Bum Hole.
Right. I mean, your husband's notes on perfume are kind of abstract.
Well, they're very abstract.
I'm being kind.
Strangely, I'm just looking at my own notes now,
God.
and I've actually put, after the initial blast of tea, there is a smell of rubber, like a proper bicycle tyre rubber, not for
Rubber
me.
bum hole.
So, but he's interpreted, and I didn't tell him my notes, obviously, but there's obviously some rubbery thing going on
Austrian,
with that.
no.
That we both can
Russian
smell.
Christmas. Peculiar.
Yeah, peculiar. I'm sorry about that. You can cut that out if you don't like it. there we go.
Yeah, good. Okay.
But always interesting. Always interesting.
So, sorry, it was Russian tea?
Milano.
Milano.
Russian tea. Yeah.
Russian tea. Okay. And anything else you'd like to single out?
One more big one that is so huge that I wore it one day and I ended up wearing it for 3 because it just stays
Jesus.
like
Yoinks.
just lasts forever on everything it touches. Black Velvet Cafe by 4160 Tuesdays.
No,
and it's
I don't think I've tried it.
Strange perfume. I mean, it basically smells like terps.
Right.
I mean, if you ever or if you've ever done wood stain, sort of like if you've ever stained a fence.
What's it called again?
Cuprinol.
What's it called?
Yeah. Black Velvet Cafe. And
Black Velvet Cafe. I assume it's meant to be a coffee sort of perfume.
So yeah, it's a coffee and dark wood sort of scent.
Right.
And I think it's got oud in it, but it's overwhelmingly smells like creosote, to be honest. I love it.
James has notes.
Of course.
You sent it to me, Ben. And I say this with respect for Sarah McCartney, but I thought it was shite. I thought it was bad because it just basically smells of, there's an oud base. I can't remember which one it is, but it just overwhelmingly smells of that oud base to the point where I'm like, have you done any perfumery here, Sarah? Do you know what I mean? Like, you've just basically smells like you've just put that into alcohol, and I can't smell. I mean, it's pretty multifaceted, like, and I do like the oud material, but I just don't see that there's any perfumery going on there. It just smells like that to me. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. You know, the cafe thing, has it got a slight coffee smell to it? It's just so overwhelmingly like, it's almost that woody amber thing again, but it, to me, I would just smell whichever one it is, Feminiche, Givaudan, whatever. There's an oud base, and I'm like, yeah, that smells exactly like that. So it just feels like she's overdone that. And if you've never smelled that before, or you're educating people about here's this material that exists, then fine. But I think if you know materials, you go, oh, that just smells of that to me. So that's why it's not interesting to me. I'm not saying it's shit or you shouldn't bother with it if you're not familiar with that, but because I am, I'm kind of like, I don't get that. I don't understand. It's so overwhelmingly that material that I was just like, yeah, I don't get it.
Well, I mean, based on your review, James, and based on Ben's description, I don't think I'm that interested in it. I mean, you say it smells like terps, and you've taken it apart, so.
I mean, to be honest, I don't even like it very much. But I
wore it for 3 days.
I like how over the top it is. The thing that draws me to it is the fact that it's just so ridiculous. It's so over the top.
Well, a selling point would be you can smell it even when you've got COVID. Potentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Allegedly. Yeah, wow.
So all brutal. These, like the Xerjoff, the other one, could you smell them? So you've been able to smell them because they're amongst your stronger perfumes.
So I didn't have that COVID, like, no smell thing. I just meant I had a blocked
up nose. Yeah.
Like, so yeah, I could, like, it could cut through. I mean, I did wear, Chez Noir, and I couldn't smell it, so I just had to. I ended up, I just went with bigger stuff for the rest of the time. I just was literally picking the stuff that was biggest I could find. But I was pleased.
It's annoying, isn't it?
It is, but I was kind of glad in a way, because like Russian tea, I really like that, and I hadn't smoked for such a long time. And I'd sort of forgot I even owned it, and it was only because I was sitting there, like going, like, oh yeah, that might do the job. That might, and I saw Russian tea, and thought, yeah. And I was really pleased because it's one that, when you forget that you've got stuff and then you find it and you're like, brilliant, I love this.
I'm kind of amazed that you even did that because, like, when I'm sick, I just walk away. I don't even try. So I love the fact that you were like, no, I'm going to fucking power through this shit with
it's like,
really
that's
stinky
most of the stuff. It's like when my collection's time to shine. Do you know what I mean? It's like, right, boys.
I have the reverse problem, by the way, Ben. I don't discover things that I'd forgotten I have. I spend ages looking for things that I'd sold years ago. It's fucking, bollocks, I must have sold it. That explains why I don't find it. All right, good. So how are we doing for time? So I definitely want to make time for the full 14. So Fliss, is there anything you want to throw at us before we get into it?
No. We're running out of time fast. So I think we should Dental occur. I nearly came. I had to sit down. Boom. Anything else is fluff. So James,
anything else is indeed fluff compared to that. Can you beat that, James?
Hopefully that will wear off over time, because otherwise this is going to be a shit podcast, isn't it? Every week. No, nothing.
No,
everything else just fluff, mate.
All perfumes are shit apart from Henry Jacques Dental Occur Soz. Good. James.
Okay. So on the first day, I wore Tom Ford effing fabulous. I'm only saying that because my son has just popped his head around the door. Hopefully he's gone back to bed.
Has he, the cheeky beggar?
I know.
Is it effing fabulous though? I mean, I've tried it in store a couple of times and it was effing forgettable. Was my sort of recollection.
I think the the label is a bit.
It is, but obviously I wouldn't own it if I didn't like it, and I actually think that.
Well, you say that, James. There's plenty of perfumes that you've admitted you do own that you don't like.
Yeah, so that statement's bollocks, really. But no, I think I think what I did there was because I was so happy that there was a swear on a bottle. I went, oh yeah, I should get that, because I thought, they're going to get rid of this or discontinue it or something soon, because you can't have that, can you?
Is yours starred out, or have you got the actual full swear?
Oh, the full swear, yeah. I got it literally.
Because they didn't make very many of those, did they? They did the full swear and then they took it off, and they just did the blocked out version. So if you've got the full swear, that's worth a lot
cool.
more,
well, that's good to know, because, like I say, I'm not that in love with it that I wouldn't get rid of it if it was some fool wants to pay loads of money for it. So excellent. Yeah, I mean, I do like it. What I like about it, it reminds me weirdly of I don't know if it's good. I think it's this interplay between Clara Sage and almondy, marzipan-ish sort of vibes. But what I like about it, it's very subtle. It's not overly gourmand or anything, or overly vanilla-ish. But that's what kind of makes it forgettable for people. And I think what it smells like is almost that kind of classiness that those Celine perfumes have. It's very understated. And I think that's why people either get the backup because they're like, well, why is he saying it's this effing fabulous thing, blah, blah, blah. And also people are underwhelmed or just simply don't like it. But I like that. Do you know, when you're cooking and you kind of, you make that I don't do that at the moment because I'm kind of watching my figure. But that sort of butter and sage, and it goes all crispy, and you get sage leaves and you essentially just fry them in butter, in that sort of Italian style cooking sort of way. That's kind of what it reminds me of. It's but it's got that slight almond undercurrent. Yeah, I think it's lovely, to be honest. I really like it. And then I wore Nightclubbing the next day by Celine, which we covered before. So
I'm drowning in this at the moment. It is stupendous.
Yeah, which is
Absolutely.
Interesting because it has got that galbanum thing to it, which you wouldn't necessarily think. But I think you're you're acquiring this taste now for these green little shocks of green through things, which can be beneficial. Then I wore House of Mammoth Embrace. So just a little recall to last week, because I thought, I'll give one of those a proper wear. And Embrace was one that we sort of touched on, and I know Dan said that he liked that one. And it's quite patchouli heavy, but a big resiny patchouli fragrance. And pretty accomplished, very good, lasts all day and, evolves and things. So I actually thought that was pretty good. Cool. Then I wore Serge Luton Chergui. What do we all think of Chergui?
I think it's massively overrated.
I I kind of forget. I had it for a while and I sold it, but it gets so much love on the groups.
Mostly by twats,
and everyone's
though.
like, I don't know about that, but it's just there's a lot of people chasing, especially the vintage formulations.
Ooh, I've got one of those. That's another one to sell on the list.
I don't know.
I barely ever wear it, really. Sorry, go on,
I always thought it's pleasant. It's pleasant, but I mean, was it particularly original at the time or something? Because it smells a lot like a lot of other stuff.
I'd say it probably was.
Okay.
I would say with all of those Lutons, they all were original at the time, but they've all been taken over by something else that does it ever so slightly better sometimes. I think there's a lot of stuff where...
They blazed a trail.
Uncle Serge started it, and he blazed a trail, and then other people have tweaked and made it bigger, more diffusive, whatever. But the OG is still good to have. But I don't know. I'm a bit out of love with Lutons at the moment. To be fair, I just feel like it's all a bit done, which is awful because they're one of my favourites. We'll talk about that.
There's a time and a place for that stuff, and it's kind of arguably come and gone. And I agree. And the weird thing about it is that I really don't like those, because I would say it's a quintessential hay perfume, right? If you want that kind of like ridiculously over the top tonka to the point where it smells of hay, I would say that is probably one of the best examples. But it's achingly sweet, but it's tempered with that sort of hay naturalness. And what it reminds me of is kind of being too hot, because I always used to wear like a sort of John Motson, like over the top sheepskin coat.
Sheepskin coat.
Yeah. Like always
always
had one of those, right? I've still got one, but it's like a kind of bomber style, but I used to have like full length ones. And I'd always wear one, even when I was a kid, right? And people used to take the piss out of me. I'd be like, oh, fuck off. And but sometimes you'd be too hot. You'd be too hot in that thing, because I'd be like,
fuck off.
I'm going to, yeah, exactly, fuck off. I'm going to wear like a nice woolly jumper and like really wrap myself up, but then you're too hot, you know? It kind of reminds me of that being like really stuffy and like in that, and it's very honeyed, extremely honeyed, to the point where, I don't really even like that. So even when I bought it, right, and it wasn't, because there was no hype about it, no fucking knew what Serge Lutens was, right? And it was that thing of, I still bought it because something about it I loved, and I was like, I know there's something in this that I'm going to like. And then subsequently I was like, nah. Every time I wore it, I was like, no, why did I buy the weird over-the-top honey shit? But now that I've kind of gone through and sort of come full circle, I do love it. And I've got to say that, I don't kind of care about hype or listen to any of that shit, but I just like it for what it is. So anyway, then I wore Hermès Bel-Ami, which is a kind of tobacco-y, classic men's sort of fragrance that we all know. Wore Eau Sauvage because I seem to always fucking wear that shit now. And then I wore Comme des Garçons Wonder Oud, which is one that I've gone on about on here and gone, yeah, I'll send you a sample, with all best intentions in the world, but I never send samples, do I? So, that reminds me.
Occasionally.
Yeah, occasionally.
But when you do, you put so much effort into it. Like, you've got these ornately drawn labels and stuff, and sort of See, me, I just spray them in a fucking thing, press a button on the printer, and job done. They're out the fucking door.
I know, but I'm glad you noticed that kind of attention to detail. But I just hate going to the post office and doing all that bollocks. Oh, by the way, there is somebody who I need to send my mammoth thing to, which Fliss sent me their address. So just hang fire, because I will send it to you. I'll get that done this week.
And if you're still waiting for that at the time that this podcast is released, you know that you're at least
you
8
probably
days
ain't
behind.
getting it then.
Give up.
Yeah. No, it's a big fucking hassle for me to send shit out. But anyway, Wonder Oud, I'm saying about things smelling very much like worn aroma chemical. This doesn't necessarily, but there is definitely Jarvanol in this kind of sandalwood accord, which is also oudy and a little bit like some of those oud bases that you've smelled before as well. But I would say definitely this kind of sandalwood. It's very, very, very tenacious and quite modern, and I do like it a lot. Might be interesting to send it to you actually to see what you all think, but I've said that twice before, so we're in this strange kind of loop now.
Look forward to that one.
Look forward to not receiving that one. Then I wore Cheruti 1881 Black, which is just some dodgy...
black.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Is it any good?
Not really. It's a kind of flanker, a sort of very forgotten flanker that probably, again, no one really knows about. It's sort of almondy. Again, not a million miles away from the effing Fabulous that we talked about. I think he's gone fucking fabulous. Fabulous. So basically, it's a sort of marzipan, gentle marzipan, slightly cherry cokey kind of throwaway musk perfume from, nothing like 1881, the original Cheruti fragrance.
You're a big fan of the original one, though, aren't you?
Yeah, I love it. I think it's totally undersung. Again, we're going to talk about that because it's a 90s one, isn't it? So anyway, then I wore another Serge Lutens, 5 o'clock au gingembre, which is another one that has people sort of divided. What do you all think of 5 o'clock au gingembre? Fliss is pulling a strange face. I don't think she's coming again.
I remember it being very I remember it being very gingembre and going, And there's a Tatli d'Orange like this, which was made with there's a
Tilda Swinton
actress, Tilda Swinton, and they're very much of a muchness, that kind of gingery, cakey thing, and I just felt like they were both nice, but I didn't feel moved by either of them, and I felt like they were gourmand. They were like at the beginning of that big gourmand movement, but not doing it very well, if I'm really honest.
I get that, yeah.
And I just felt like they lacked depth. They were both very linear, and I was left wanting, and I was sad for Tilda because I love Tilda. I was like, Tilda, really? Did you honestly manage that? The smells of that? Because I don't think that's you, babes.
I know what you mean.
No.
And the same, I completely understand what you're saying about 5 o'clock Engine John, but I like it, but it exactly,
nice.
And it's fine, and it's very surface level. It doesn't take me to any sort of deeper places. There's no other sort of level of appreciation. It's just what it is, and I appreciate it for what it is.
I think, that and Shiggy, both of them, I feel, are very safe for Serge Lutens. Like, I quite like gingembre. I didn't like Shiggy. I had it and sold it because I just thought it was so boring. But I think both of them are really safe for Lutens. Like you expect. Or I expect, when I smell Serge Lutens, I expect something a little bit complicated or that's going to sort of like throw me through a bit of a loop, or, at least make me double think something, or,
It was one of the first Serge that made me go, are you losing it, babes?
Yeah.
I was like, and then I wouldn't want to say bland, because that's over glossing the situation. But it was the first time I went,
there's nothing there that makes you really question what you're smelling. Do you know what, like, and makes you really sort of like ruminate on it.
There was no kind of sort of like story. There was nothing happened after you smell it, and then nothing happens afterwards. What happens to the lady that eats the ginger cake? Does she go for a tea party? Does she go and have sex? Does she go and drink mad?
Why
there's
always
no
sex?
7-8 o'clock, is there?
But this is what I mean. It was just all about the 5 o'clock. I wanted to know what happened to her in the evening. There was no moreness.
No moreness.
What were you saying, Dan? Sorry,
always has to be about. Well, always about sex. It always has to be about sex.
Serge Lutens often are, though, aren't they? They're often about having sex with his mum and stuff. And
what?
Really?
Aren't they? Like, there's lots of weird
some of the stories that he writes, there's a lot of double entendre with the old discussions.
Well, he's a photographer, and he's
Danielle.
It's like visual things.
Danielle, not Danielle. Georgina, I'm not blushing. Okay. Right. So
anyway, sorry. Right. We're powering through.
Let's keep going.
So, Tom Ford for Men Extreme was the next.
Lovely.
Yeah, I thought you'd like this,
really
Dan, because
nice.
I know you got a bottle, didn't you?
What I used to have. It's very similar to Japon Noir, but it's actually surprisingly delicate, even though it's called Extreme.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really liked it, but like the bottle I had was quite expensive, and I couldn't justify keeping that and Japon Noir, so I sold it. But yeah, it's a really good perfume.
Yeah.
I mean, the smell is fantastic.
Yeah, it's very thick and truffly, and yeah, it's lovely.
Truffly, that's it, isn't it? Yeah, really good.
I love it. So anyway, yeah, then I wore a Zeno Davidoff, which is a kind of patchouli heavy men's 80s, is it? I think it's 80s. Zeno.
Yeah, Zeno is the one that smells.
It's a bit odd.
The Tom Ford one smells like it.
Probably. It's not everyone's cup of tea. I don't know which Tom Ford.
Yeah. Fougere something.
Oh right, yeah. I think I know the one you mean. Yeah, it does have that. It's almost like it smacked you over the face with the patchouli, kind of like if you don't like patchouli, you're not going to be feeling this. But the way it's embellished, the way it's kind of worked.
Beau de Jour.
Oh, sorry. Okay, that's it. Yeah,
I just looked it up. Yeah, it's Beau de Jour.
Yeah. I'd say Beau de Jour probably has more other stuff going on and is a little bit less focused than that. I'd say it's kind of that's more of like a fougere that then has been pushed in a sort of patchouli direction. This is more like something that's been built around patchouli and has all these complementary notes, which are very that lacks the other stuff that Beau de Jour has. But I still look. I mean, Zeno Davidoff is just a fantastic fragrance. Like it's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I've tried. In fact, I've probably got a bottle somewhere of Zeno, but my abiding sort of impression of it was that it smelt cheap. Not because it was cheap, because I don't. Just something can be inexpensive without smelling cheap. But to me, it sort of smelt cheap, like cheap things had been used to make it, rather than they used high quality ingredients.
I'll go along with that.
And it wasn't the price that made me think that. But yeah.
No, I completely understand that. Yeah, it's not a big luxurious kind of thing, and given the fact that we've smelled a load of patchouli materials, you would go, okay, it probably isn't the best patchouli that's in that perfume in the first place. It was probably one of the like fourth or fifth choice ones out of the ones that we had. For example, do you know what I mean? So yeah, I completely get that. But you've got to love, at least they're not trying to charge a fortune for it and it smells cheap. Do you know what I mean? So there could be a lot worse. The next one, I don't know whether I'm going to go into it too deeply because maybe this is another conversation or it might even, I don't know. Maybe I'm opening a big can of worms with this. But I wore Dusita Rosalina. Or Rosalita or Rosalie. Is it called Rosalina? I don't know. Yeah, Rosalina, I think.
Rosaline.
Oh, Rosaline.
I think, isn't
okay.
It?
Yeah. Okay. So, first of all, it made me question whether she makes the perfumes or not. And I just because of all these ones that we've smelled now, I'm like, I don't know exactly her background. I thought she was just like an indie perfumer, and I kind of bought those first ones, not actually physically bought them. Sorry, I haven't supported the brand with any kind of financial in any way. But no, I basically I bought that she made those initial perfumes because I was like, yeah, okay, she's got a style and there's certain things. It's like, but all these other ones, since we've got all those samples, I'm like, nah, I don't buy that they can be that polished and that good. And maybe I'm being massively fucking offensive to Prasanna, is it? Prasanna
Uma Vajani.
Prasanna Uma Vajani.
I don't think she makes them.
I mean, they're beautiful. That's the problem as well, is that a lot of
Correct.
them are really lovely.
They are really good. And that takes nothing away from it.
Really fucking
And I don't
good.
care about Roger Dove. I don't care if you're not the perfumer. But I find the maybe the pretense that you are, it doesn't even bother me that much. I don't really give a shit, right? And it's not really even, but it's a talking point for people like us, and other people are more bothered by it, right? But I just kind of think,
it would bother me. Honestly, it would bother me. Like, I love to see her, and it doesn't. The thing is, it doesn't matter if she doesn't make them. But I think I would just think, why don't you just fucking say that?
Yeah, and that's fair enough.
Like, why don't you just credit the perfumer? You can't. Like, what? Why have you got to like stick your own name on it? You fucking narcissistic prick. Why can't you be like just the person that
brought it all together? Yeah.
Zoologist. I mean, at no point does he sit there going, "I'm the perfumer." He says, "No, these are my perfumers. I control the house. I'm like a creative director,
impresario."
That's where it ends. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with being that. There's nothing wrong with being the conductor. You don't have to be a musician. You can be the conductor.
You can be
that's a skill in itself.
Jobs.
Well,
the Steve Jobs of perfumery.
Funnily enough, I had a conversation with a guy who we must get on, and I've said to him before that we do a Patreon interview with him and stuff. But Clayton, right? So Clayton goes around the world and interviews all these perfumers. He knows a hell of a lot about the. And I said to him, we had that exact conversation, Ben's exact sort of beef that he has with that, and I completely understand that. I'm not. I'm sort of less militant about it now, but I completely get that. Why even the pretense? He gave a very good, very sort of nuanced answer as to why certain brands may want to just either omit certain information or just don't make it a thing, or try to paint this kind of story of what's going on. And it just makes it easier for non-hardcore consumers like us, or people who want to know every little detail. Most people, your average person doesn't, and they will just take at face value whatever, is put in front of them. So he gave a much better explanation, and some of it I was like, oh, right, okay, I'm kind of half convinced by that. But yeah, I do get that. And it's certainly from an indie point of view, because I've always thought that was a superior indie brand, right? I was always like, those perfumes are fantastic. She's got a really solid style where you can tell that that's her stuff, even though they're varied and they're, all different types of perfumes, really. And she uses all these amazing materials. But in actual fact, a lot of them are floral accords that maybe have some naturals in and stuff, but they've definitely been constructed. And now it's just made me rethink every other perfume. We haven't even spoken about what this perfume is, right? To me, it's a kind of horribly, like, over the top.
This rosary.
Yeah, like over the top,
right,
sort of twangy, kind of very boozy opening. Like,
love the word twangy.
Yeah,
by the way.
it is twangy, right? Because it's that saffron. It's not got saffron, but it's that twangy sort of like thing. And it's very kind of leathery and really over the top in the opening. And you can smell rose, right? And then the rose just develops and gets bigger and bigger. And yes, it does smell like Bulgarian rose oil or whatever. It smells really accurate and whatever. And then it just gets, and then I know it's an accord. I know it's been extended, and that all those tropes, right, just speak to me of, this is somebody who, this has been made by a perfumer or in a laboratory of perfumers or whatever, because this is your classic oud rose thing. And she never went to those tropes, right? She never went to those places of, they were always like original kind of like ideas, even on like floral things like jasmine and whatever. And this just hit me like that. And I was like, oh my God, she's not the perfumer. Right? And I felt stupid for not thinking that beforehand. But I also, like I say, I was prepared to give it some on face value. And if I'm wrong about any of this, I need to shut the fuck up. And she needs to be heavily, heavily put up on a pedestal and praised as a fucking, God-given, like, I don't even know, like just some kind of like amazing, naturally gifted perfumer who can just do all this. Or she's done a hell of a lot of independent like research, and because you smell a perfume by a Sarah McCartney or by even like Hans Henley, even some of these people who are really the top of the indie, or even like Andy Tower and people like that, right? You smell those perfumes.
There's a different smell. I've been doing a lot of recently. I've been doing a lot of Sarah McCartney testing, and a lot of them are really interesting, and I've been enjoying doing it during the day. But I would say that the style is not my style, and there is a set. There's a feeling about them that is also very towery. That is also very. There's an indiness about them that you can feel.
That is trial and error, and that's somebody who's not quite got to that polished place that we're talking about, a Dusita or whatever.
And I'm not saying that some of them aren't lovely, but some of them I don't get and some of them I do, which is the same with any trained perfumer brand. But there's a texture about them that feels indie, and Dusita doesn't have that. I would agree with you that Dusita does not have that texture.
Well, I think this is definitely one to put to Pisana when we interview her for the Patreon.
Yes.
I look forward to that.
Okay.
In the meantime, we will not libel ourselves
okay, right.
in any way.
So I'll just be dead quick, right? So I wore Bentley for men, black. The black one, whatever that one's called.
The Gucci one.
Yeah,
the Gucci one.
pour
the
on.
Almerac.
Yes, the Almerac.
Yeah.
And we've all talked about that. It was the same formula, blah, blah, blah. It's really quite good, but like not as good as Gucci pour on, whatever. Then I wore another Dusita, which I'm wearing today, which is Fleur de Lalita. And it's, I couldn't for the life of me, I was like, yeah, okay, it's got this dryness, but it's got the sort of, I went, it's an exotic floral, right? That's what I was thinking in my head, right? And then I was like, oh, I'm going to have a look on Fragrantica and see what's actually in this. And one of the mid notes, and I know, Fragrantica is not the font of all knowledge, but was exotic floral notes.
Nice.
So I was like,
I bet you felt just a little bit fucking,
I did.
A little bit pleased with yourself
I
there,
did, but there's loads of other shit in there. And I would say, it's a really nice, very, very
loads
lovely.
Of other shit.
Yeah, it's a very, very good floral perfume. Very nice, and I've thoroughly enjoyed wearing it today. Done.
Good. Done. Boom. Right. Well, after having to sit through Fliss's sexual perfumery exploits and James pretty well get us into hot water with the legal team, and Ben's use and abuse of extremely potent perfumery over the last week, I feel like I could use a break. So let's wrap up part one. We will be back in just a few minutes. Stick with us. Cheers. Hello and welcome back to part two of Les Oderants. This week we are going to be taking a tour through the 1990s. This is depressing actually, because I put a post on our Facebook group, which I believe Ben is now an actual member of, asking for suggestions, and most people were like, yeah, no, I was too young in the 90s to really be wearing perfume, so I don't really remember it. Fuck off! I mean, honestly.
There was a lot of that.
Fuck
there really
off.
was a lot of people going, I was 3. You bitches.
Who is she? Were you? Well, fuck off then.
We just do the opposite. And just be like, remember the good old
ridiculous.
days, and I was doing this when you were shitting.
Yeah,
us.
exactly.
Do you know
Back
what I
in the
mean?
90s. Shit. Why are you chewing on a Ross, dickhead? Yeah, well, I mean, for me, the 90s were sort of a very significant time, because I kind of went into them. I think I was 14 at the start of the 90s, and obviously about 24 by the end. So quite a sort of decade there to cover, right through my sort of teens and university years. And so my sort of perfume journey at the time was quite diverse. But yeah, for me, the 90s was all, I say all, the bit that I can vaguely remember of it was basically about getting absolutely fucked up in like house and techno clubs. That was my main thing in the 90s, really. I think all Britpop and that largely passed me by because I went off me fucking tits. So what were you doing in the 90s, Fliss? What were you doing?
In 1990, I was 14, and obviously by 1999, I was about with the same age. 23, 24 in 1999. And at that point, going through high school, through to the first couple of years at university, I was basically Hermione Granger. I totally fucked it up as I was like, leave.
You were Hermione Granger? Well, you were actually in Harry Potter?
And I was very much at the front of the class with my hand up the whole time. I was, I was. But by the time the second year of university came around, that's when I began to lose it. So we should do something around the 2000s, and then we can talk about my fucked up time. But at this point in my life, I was very, very sensible and straight-laced and very academically focused. My perfume journey was, but at the same time, my perfume journey was very different, I think, to a lot of what other people were wearing. So I used to walk home or walk to the station from my school through Norwich. There was a House of Fraser, or it was a Debenhams. Yeah, there was a pedestrianised area. There was a big Debenhams, and you could shortcut through Debenhams to get to the station faster. And I'd made friends with one of the...
I just remembered where that scene's from.
I'd made friends with the lady
of Norwich City Centre.
On the YSL counter in Debenhams. And I don't know what it was. There was something... I don't think our ages could have been that much different, but there was some sort of simpatico. And I used to walk quite fast so I could get to Debenhams and spend 10 or 20 minutes with her before getting to the station. And it was at this point, between the ages of like 14... to 18 when I left school, that's when my perfume journey started, because she introduced me to things like Féminité de Bois, because although she was a YSL counter, there was like she was also in charge of the Shiseido counter. There was other things. There was the beginnings of Serge Lutens. There was just a load of stuff, and we would this hard 20 minutes, if I walked fast enough, began my journey into something that was really magical. And everyone else was wearing CK1, and like they were rushing to the boys' school to spend their hard 20 minutes at the boys' school to talk to whoever was in the rugby team. And I was rushing to this makeup counter, and this woman would give me dregs of testers, like the last 20 mil of stuff. And there's a whole heap. I've got a big list of stuff that I was wearing at that time, but it was all down to this kind of funny little friendship that we had, and she would give me all of these perfumes, and that's when it really started for me. And the first thing I ever bought with my own money was Féminité de Bois. And up until that point, I'd been wearing like a basic thing from Boots that was kind of spicy. It was like a really generic thing. It wasn't even like a coatie or anything. There wasn't even like a label on it. But I remember the first time I smelled Féminité de Bois by Shiseido, and just everything, my world just changed, and I saved up for it. And she'd also given me some little testers of it and some little samples of it, and it blew my mind. And it was a completely, and everything was then almost about perfume right from that point. Yeah.
Nice. And Ben, what were you doing in the 90s?
Well, it's really funny because I think like the first two perfumes I got into, you can probably summarize it in a way, because in the early 90s, I was very much like obsessed with the American pop culture and like grunge, right? And like all the kind of rock and grunge and post-punk sort of bands that were coming, they were all American, right? And I was like, and sort of the first ever perfume-ish, I mean, I don't know if we're talking about pop culture or perfume, or are we going to come back to perfume?
We can talk about whatever the fuck you like, mate.
Well,
this is Les Oderants, not fucking...
So the first perfume that I remember...
Not anything else.
...was like Polo Sport, which, had the American flag on it and all the rest of it, right? And so that kind of went along with that. And then kind of the opposite of Dan, like as soon as Britpop came, that was me. Like I was all in on that. And that whole kind of like dirty, crusty Britpopper, sort of heroin chic CK1 kind of vibe. So like those two perfumes were probably the first two perfumes I really got into.
Do you know what? That's really funny. Polo Sport. I would not associate that at all with the sort of grunge scene.
No, me neither. I just loved the smell of it. Like it didn't, you know, like I was too young at that point. Really, I mean, I was into the music, but I wouldn't say I was into the scene. I just liked the music. You know, I think
the whole point of grunge was that it didn't have a perfume associated with it. Do you know what I mean? That's the whole thing, wasn't it? It's like whatever. It's like.
Well, so that's
in the name.
So kind of like we were just talking though about me feeling like I've never fitted in places like that. Why not? Like, you know, like I've always been really into like grunge and stuff, but I just smelled nice at the same time.
That was the point. They were like, no, he smells too nice.
Yeah,
he
that in a way,
nice.
that is. But isn't that the point? Like, you do what the fuck you want. You express yourself however you like. And if I'm gonna like, and that kind of goes into. I mean, I don't know, because I don't want to like swamp this and go too far. I don't know if we're going to come back to the perfume, but I also
eventually.
Because eventually, like I think it was those punk aesthetics that I sort of felt a kinship to, like that got me into also low dissy, and I smelt that on a like someone at school who was obviously a girl, and I was like, that's nice, but I'm not going to wait until I bump into someone to smell that again. I'm just going to wear it like myself, so because I like it, and I don't want to have to wait till I pass someone in the corridor at school to smell that. So, and I just thought, you know what? Fuck it. Who cares if it's for a boy or for a girl? I'm just
like you're saying, that's the attitude.
And that was another one.
That is the attitude, isn't it? I often think of that. Just to quote some kind of pop culture bullshit, like I always do. In the words of Mark Corrigan from
yes,
you know, if you can't if you can't welcome people into a group that stand against everything you believe in, then what kind of a hippie fucking free for all is this? Do you know what I mean? Which is exactly what those kind of things about like punk and all that sort of stuff. The whole point is that, you know, especially if you're hanging out with people who have this kind of uniform sort of, oh, I'm a goth, and they all wear the same shit, but they feel like they're individual. I think we touched on this last week, but like that thing of why don't you have your thing is like, well, yeah, okay, I've got all the grungy clothes, but I fucking smell nice at the same time because I've got some kind of thing where I think that's a thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, I totally get where you're coming from with that, especially being as the fact that, you know, we're sort of a similar kind of age, and I was into all that grunge scene as well.
Yeah, I think me and James probably share similar 90s.
Yeah, we do. And I'm just thinking about in 1990, I was actually half you guys' age, Dan and Fliss. I was half your age then. So I was 7.
So
I was 7 at the beginning of the 90s.
So you were 7.
And then I was,
right.
What will I've been at the end of the 90s? Can't even do the maths.
A little bit older.
Wait, should we see if we can...
Yes. Okay,
so let's see if we can add 10 to 7.
So I was 17 in 1999. But having said that, like I say, I had a very early introduction to perfumes. My dad used to talk to me about like the technical shit of perfumery because he was a chemist and he knew about that shit. But also, my mum, like, you know, I liked things just like anything. And I told you she bought me Fahrenheit because I liked it, you know, when I was like 8 or something. So like ridiculously kind of early to be like into that. I was like, no, I want that.
Nice.
And she's like, all right, then, you know, I'll get you that. And so I got that for Christmas, and that was kind of, that's always the thing that I think about. But I generally did like them, and I liked having little collections of things. And I'd always get, you know, like if my dad went like traveling or whatever, I'd get little travel bottles of stuff. He always wore basically the polo greens, the, you know, the men's, the Paco Rabanne, all that shit was all stuff that he wore. So, you know, it was almost just by osmosis. It was like you're into this just now. I don't even know why. There was no like moment or kind of thing of like, oh, I suddenly like this. It was just always there, and it was always something that I kind of, in that exact same way as what Ben's talking about, of that thing of like, I still liked like designer label shit. Like I liked like clothes and stuff like that, even though I was into all that grunge scene that was kind of like rejecting all that. I was like, well, why can't I like that shit as well? Do you know what I mean? And I think the 90s was a time of that. It was a time of, oh, well, I like heavy guitar bands, but I also like Aphex Twin, but I also like this. And it was that like advent of the fucking, the iPod came later, but that thing of like having a really eclectic sense of like, you don't just have the same bands on the wall of your posters. Do you know what I mean? You'd have like fucking some dance music to something else. And it was all like part of the kind of culture. And I think that's been more so now that kids are into like a huge range of different things, and it's good, you know. And like the gangster rap and like hip hop and stuff, that was all coming around at that time, and you could be into that. And a lot of the time, a lot of the people who were into like the heavy sort of like guitar music and stuff were into that as well, because it had the same kind of like hardcoreness to it. You know, you'd like Wu-Tang Clan, but you'd also like Metallica and shit like that, you know. Rage Against the Machine, that's a perfect
Rage
kind of
Against the Machine.
The two things, isn't it? So.
The first band I saw in the 90s, Rage Against the Machine at Manchester Empire.
I think that's reflected as well, though, in the like at the how fashionable androgyny was in the 90s, and I think to bring it back to perfume,
really good point.
Like, a lot of the perfume was that unisex androgynous kind of thing. Like I was saying, I wore loads
cleanliness.
But I mean, I say I like wearing low de issy, right? Like the female version. But actually, I don't really think it's that feminine. I think it's, you know, I don't think that's like, it sounds almost risky to be like, oh, I was a teenager and I was wearing like low, but it wasn't really like that. It was quite a androgynous perfume. You know, it's quite a unisex perfume, I think.
So I think that's an interesting point, because what you say is certainly true about the sort of the rise of androgyny as a sort of, I guess, quite mainstream accepted kind of, I don't know what the word would be.
Counterculture
thing.
So there was a counterculture around it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been around before. But the 70s had like Bowie and T-Rex, but the 90s kind of brought it back, I think.
Of course. But also during the 90s, there was the sort of, the rise of the lads and the ladettes and all that sort of magazine. FHM, magazine culture and all that bullshit.
Sugar Ape.
Yeah, Sugar Ape. Sugar Ape.
SUGA's inside the R.
Anyway, yeah. Yeah, Nathan fucking Barley. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so all that laddishness, and I was thinking about perfumes that I wore. So Le Mal came out in, I think, 95 or thereabouts, right? And I remember wearing that a lot for sort of clubs. Le Mal, I think I started the 90s wearing Dupe. Yeah, what a cunt. But in fact,
I didn't say that.
Well, you did. I mean, you said it. You said it with your laughter, your haunting mockery of me. I remember going, because I went to university. And I remember showing up at university and putting my bottle of Joop on the. Is that how you pronounce it, by the way? Joop. Yop. Okay. I went to university in 1994.
Wow.
Yeah, so 1994 I went to Leeds. Same time apparently as Mr. Smelly. Word up, Dan. I didn't know Dan at university, but yeah, we were at the same university at the same time. But I was very diligent in my studies, as you'd expect. Just apropos of nothing at all, this is just something that I remembered, right? Because I'd planned yesterday, to have this conversation with my daughter and never had to. And the conversation was going to be about why a bunch of people who are into perfume meeting up and going and smelling perfumes is not weird. Okay, and this was the argument I dreamed up. tell me whether it works, right? Well, people who are into certain types of music get together and go and listen to bands, or go and share each other's records, or they swap. They used to swap certainly tapes and vinyl and all that kind of stuff when we were younger. People who are into wine will go to conventions where they will all taste different wines and compare notes and all that kind of stuff. And all this is stimulation of a different set of senses. That's all it is.
The decant kind of community or industry or whatever you want to call it, like of Facebook groups. So I feel that's like a direct analogue of when you used to make mixtapes.
Oh, totally. Exactly. Getting a package from someone, it's like getting a mixtape. It's like an act of love. I heard you talk about this. I saw your post on this. These are things that you will also like. It is a complete act of love. It is just like sitting, but also those mixtapes that were made on the radio by waiting when they were doing. Like,
they always said like Terence Trent D'Arby, like, oh, what the fuck's this? And then something else.
You had to press play and record at the same time, and it was just but it's completely is the same thing. And I was reading a thing recently about there was a bunch of kind of psychologists and behavioralists, people like Kant and Freud, who decided that of all of our senses, smell was the most animalistic and therefore the most base and therefore the least useful and therefore the most degrading one to... Well,
degrading?
This is in their words, to celebrate. So you can celebrate art with your eyes, you can celebrate music with your ears, you can celebrate great food with your mouth and your sense of taste, but smell was an animalistic thing, and therefore it's not
what a cant. That's all I can say.
What a cant. And up until then there had been artists that had been in the set, like perfumers had been celebrated, and then suddenly the prevailing cerebral thought was, oh well, that's very animalistic, we're not going to think about that anymore. So you can have your 5-course dinner or you can go to the art gallery, but being sent a bunch of decants from your friends is it's very much lesser as a sense.
But it's where it gets you, isn't it? It doesn't matter how you get there, it's where you end up. And if something moves you in a certain way,
it's the same as what Dan is trying to say to Anna.
It's like, or sniffing
absolutely, it's just another sense that you're stimulating. It's still valid.
It's just a particular... Yes, exactly. And all this is a group of people who have a particular appreciation for the same sort of thing. It's no weirder than being a goth. In fact, arguably, it's a lot less weird than being a goth. Sorry to goths to pick on you for a second week in a row, but that shit.
I was going to say, this is a running theme now.
This is like all that rubber and
weird,
black
like
fucking
metal finger,
leather.
Nah. That is a thing they do apparently.
Cyber fingers.
No, but you sorry. No, Fliss has mentioned that thing about the smell before, which I think is fascinating and really interesting. But I kind of don't get why are you ragging on smell? I kind of get the point that you're making.
Well, I don't know. I mean, but socioculturally, that is what's happened.
It's almost why be snobby about that? I don't.
Did you just say socioculturally? I think that may just be the most grown-up word we've ever had on this podcast. Congratulations.
As I said, in the 90s, I was Hermione Granger.
Yeah, nice. So what were you studying in the 90s?
When I went to university, I studied biological anthropology at UCL. And I also studied part of my degree was also looking at some of the other anthropological studies. So I also did medical anthropology and socioanthropology as well, but it was mainly biological anthropology. It was great. Nice. I really loved it. But at the same time, I was in this big mixing bowl of people. So there were obviously the school that I went to had wanted me to go to a very particular type of university, which we're not going to talk about. But in the end, I ended up at UCL, which...
Did it have red bricks?
We had a very high intake to Oxbridge, and it was a shock that I didn't get in despite 7 pool interviews. But UCL offered me a 2E offer, and they just said, fuck that shit, just come here, babe. And I think it was the best thing I ever did, because also by being in London, there was this huge mixing pot of people on the course, but then there was also so many other things, and I did spend a lot of time in going back to the perfume, but I spent a lot of time in department stores smelling things, and there was a lot of other things available to me in London that wouldn't have been available to me if I'd been in Oxford or Cambridge. And I felt as if socioculturally there was a huge amount of things that university offered me that wasn't just about education of my brain, but there was about education of me as a whole person. And I think that perfume was definitely one of that. And I have lots of memories of going into some of those big department stores, Serge Luton, all of that. So, Uncle Serge and me at that point, we were best buds. I couldn't afford any of it. Well, I mean, in terms of me, like... Did he know you well? I knew him very well, but I couldn't afford any of that stuff. But I remember going into some of those big stores, and just almost stroking the bottles and just being like, "This is mentally good." There was some, all of that kind of early stuff. I remember just thinking, these are great things.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, what about yourself, James? What were you doing during the 90s? You were 7, really, and then you were 17.
No, I was...
I guess...
at school, obviously. And... What
were you into? Like, presumably smoking weed and
just being a caner,
reprobate.
But no, it's interesting because you talk to... Talking to you, because obviously I had like older sisters, and I had a lot of friends that were like 10 years older than me, who'd been like, ravers, like, going to like proper raves and stuff like that. So it was kind of like I had like the sort of influence of that, and like American culture, like just thinking about like things like talking about like the first records that you bought or whatever. Like the first record I bought was Iron Maiden, right? So I was like into that kind of like that sort of thing. So like Number of the Beast was like the first record that I ever bought with my own money. And yeah, so I was into that kind of thing, and that kind of like that sort of like cultural kind of thing of that, like it's a sort of way of like life. When you talk about like Henry Rollins and stuff like that, and like that kind of like I don't know, sort of like, and like Bill Hicks and shit like that. Do you know what I mean? There was like this kind of cultural, like, I don't even know what it was, but like I was sort of into it, and like I can still, like, if I talk to somebody like Jenny is like older than me. She's probably like similar sort of age to like you guys and stuff, but we still have like common sort of things that we like know about. So there's not like, a million sort of miles away, and also because I was quite a fucking big hairy cunt even when I was like 13 and stuff. I was drinking in pubs, do you know what I mean, and like hanging around with men and shit like that. So like I feel as though I was kind of old before my fucking years, so I was quite haggard by the time 1999. By the time 1999 came around, I was fucking I'd lived a life. No, it was that thing of like, you thought you were, but then you're just like, my life hasn't even really fucking started yet. But anyway, no, so that's just a kind of little sort of glimpse. Not a lot, really, is what I was doing. And I wish I'd kind of applied myself more talking about like academic stuff, because I was clearly like bright and probably could have done it, but just like had this kind of attitude of like, it'll work out, life will work out. And I still kind of am a bit like that now. And it hasn't quite. No, it has. To an extent, but so nothing about perfume there at all. But no, perfume. I like that kind of stuff. I like that.
No, that's all right.
I had that whole like CK1 like period, like everybody else did, and it was that weird thing of everyone else smells like this, but I quite fucking like it. So it wasn't even like I want to stand out and be like an individual. It was just that, and then obviously getting into like niche. I'd have to say that was probably. It won't have been in the 90s, I don't think, when I will have tried.
Well, there's early artisans and stuff. I just remember that. I remember them first coming out and just being.
Was that in the? I mean, yeah, exactly. It was like, did they come out?
1994.
I definitely wasn't into them then, because I was 11. So.
Bless of course you
into those.
Well, I was just arriving at uni with my bottle of Jupe. I was thinking about that, what everyone was wearing. I don't really remember anyone else really owning perfume. Like my housemates, I don't think they owned perfume. They quite often take a spray or two of something of mine before we went out, but I don't really... And obviously it wasn't as an important part of my life then as it is now. But my recollection was that actually not that many people gave a shit about it.
Not in the same way.
I certainly never really had much of a conversation. I remember talking to a few girls about it. Like, one of my girlfriends at the time was kind of into it. But on the whole, I don't remember meeting anyone who really...
But also the perfumes that they did, they were wearing like
take a couple
much
of
more fashionable stuff like CK1. I was smelling like old ladies at that point. I was already well into my Sophia Grossman. I was wearing Trésor, Sun, Moon and Stars, all of that stuff. All of those big Sophia Grossman things that were coming out in the 90s. I was wearing all of that really early, and it's not trendy. I was not trendy in any way
I was
possible.
not a trendy child.
I was I was thinking like an old lady.
It's weird that you say that, because I remember what everybody wore. It was insignificant to them, but it was like I saw it as like kind of, what have you made that choice for? Like, why, and even to like this day, I remember saying to some of my mates now, going, oh yeah, I remember you used to wear like whatever in school, and they wouldn't even they'd be like, they're a bit creeped out, like, what? Like, I'd be like, yeah, you used to wear that shit, and they'd be like, how do you remember that? And I'm like, don't know. I just went through your bins one night.
But I also remember some of the marketing.
I'm a better smeller than you.
I remember like the marketing of Safari, and just looking at these beautiful people in this Ralph Lauren, these big double pages in Vogue or Tatler or whatever, of these gorgeous sun-washed people on the safari in Africa in these gorgeous glamping tents. We call them glamping now. It's like a baby tiger or a baby lion.
They were just tents back then.
I remember looking at that. I have really strong memories of looking at those marketing tools in magazines and going, I want to smell of Safari, and buying Safari so that I could smell like that. Or looking at who was that lady who used to do the Trésor, and just thinking, I want to be that French. I want to be as French and chic as you, and just that's where my head went. I think marketing was very different in those days, and those big double page spreads with those little tiny bits of perfume that you had to peel off the corner of the bottom right hand corner and then rub your wrist on. I remember. I don't know, because nobody buys magazines anymore, do they? But at the time, I remember just like cutting out, or they used to do those fold over bits, those like zigzag fold over bits, and I remember just like going and tearing out all of those bits of dry perfume that were in the fold out bits and stacking them in my drawer at home. And before a night out, I would like open one and rub it on my wrist and rub it on my neck.
You get a whole couple of days out of it then, wouldn't you? You could get 2 or 3 wears out of those. And I don't know if they do them anymore, but that's a really strong memory of not being able to afford the bottle. Yeah.
But if you bought a Vogue, you might get 3 or 4. We're in
danger of sounding like that 4 Yorkshiremen scat from Monty Python. Dan's looking blankly at that one.
Oh, in my day, we only had perfume and pins for dinner.
We used to eat gravel and live in road.
Yeah.
You had to scrub your perfume right on your neck until the whole paper had chafed your ears.
Yes.
Very good. Very good. Ben, go on.
Well, I was just thinking that because not being able to afford it, like things shaped my perfume collection. quite significantly because so I had a Polo Sport that I got for Christmas, I think, and then I really liked CK1 because everyone at school had it. This is probably like when I was only like 14 or 15. So this was before I had like a real job. All I had was a paper round, right? So I couldn't really afford it. So, but there was a video rental shop, like VHS rental shop, kids, and they sold fake bottles of CK1. So I bought a fake bottle of CK1.
Down the VHS rental shop.
So I bought a fake bottle of CK1 from the VHS rental shop. And that was my other one. And then, but interestingly, like out of that, like, so that's just kind of a funny anecdote, but out of that, as actually, I got one of the perfumes that I've always loved. And now I still love it because I couldn't afford CK1. I went to the pharmacy that was like near my house and picked up a bottle of a splash of Calvin Klein Eternity. Because it was cheap.
Nice.
Or not cheap, but it was a lot cheaper. But because it was still Calvin Klein, I was like, well, that's got to still be cool, right? And so I bought it more or less because of that. But actually, I ended up loving it. And I also loved the fact that it wasn't CK1. It was something slightly different. But it was still fresh. It was still sweet. You know, it still had... It was a bit more masculine, but it was still, you know...
It's so funny what you say, though, about fake stuff, like that. Because I was reading Lizzie Ostrom's perfume book, The Century of Scents, and I was reading the 90s bit to prepare, obviously, because I am still Hermione Granger.
Well, it's so well rehearsed.
But she was saying, and she goes through like the whole century of scents. There's all these years and all these perfumes, but she has a special section in the 90s for fakes. She said because that was the beginning of when fakes really began to have traction and become sold in a way that we now understand them now. That happened in the kind of like the early to mid 90s. That's so you going and buying a fake. That's very 90s.
Very 90s.
And you made it even more 90s.
Very 90s, yeah.
VHS
excellent
rental shop. Yeah.
VHS shop. Yeah. It was called Video Star.
Not,
of course it was.
Video Star. Yeah. Nice. Well, I had Obsession, CK Obsession, and I remember thinking that Eternity and everything else, like One, all smelt dead girly. Yeah, they're all dead girly and rubbish. Obsession was just like the one proper man.
Well, arguably that's
or at
the
least
most
so I thought.
Sort of girly one, wouldn't you say? Like, yeah. Like, looking back on it now.
Yeah, I know. I was just thinking about that. I don't think...
No.
Yeah, at the time it didn't feel that way. But
I think one that people don't mention, and again, this might not have been 90s, it might have just been into the 2000s. No, I think it was 90s. Escape. Remember Escape?
Yeah.
CK Escape. I do.
Yeah,
I remember
it's
thinking
not one of the best ones, but it's okay. I used to have it. I think I used it all, but
no, I actually no. Now I do remember. Weirdly, after me saying most people, I can't remember people's perfume and stuff. I do remember a guy that I was quite matey with at the time, and he had two bottles of perfume. One was Escape, and the other was Cool Water. It's a pretty decent sort of set of perfumes. You're going to have two. It's two not bad ones, I suppose, with the benefit of hindsight. Yeah, mad. Pretty. I was thinking about the sort of. We were talking about before, Fliss, about the mixtapes. And I'm trying to decide what perfumes I would actually put on a sort of perfume mix of the 90s. Go on.
Well, even if I wasn't wearing them myself, I think in terms of what my mum was wearing, things like June or Sunflowers. I remember my sunflowers just being, that was like the go-to Christmas present, the go-to Mother's Day present. And at the time, and there was a whole Elizabeth Arden trend at that point, and I just remember that for any aunt or mum or female relative, if you got something from the Elizabeth Arden concession, you were being a good cousin or a good niece or whatever.
So sunflowers is particularly triggering for me. It's a good job my wife doesn't listen to this podcast, but my girlfriend, when I was doing my A-levels, so
come on, who've you fingered? Come on.
What was that? 17? Well, I don't have a sister, James, so oh my God. Anyway, she wore sunflowers, and I cannot smell that without immediately being sort of I'll go into the gory details, but immediately being sort of in that headspace of being like sort of 17, 18 again. It's also a piece of crap. I mean, I don't think it's a very good perfume. It doesn't even smell very nice, but at the time, it's sort of, I don't know.
Are there any good Elizabeth Ardens?
It's bad. My mum still wears it.
That's an interesting one.
And I find it, my mum still wears it. She's not really a mess. I mean, recently she came round and she had like a little...
It's a good job I haven't met your mum. She came round, she had a little smell of things, and there was a couple of other things that she quite liked. And I was like, do you want to have something different for Christmas this year, Mum? But nope. Just get me another bottle of sunflowers.
But yeah, there is that. That and pleasures. I can't smell pleasures without thinking of a couple of friends' mums who used to wear it, who I didn't.
There's a Lauder, Estee Lauder.
Just being
that is cloying
and very sweet, and just being like, oh. But also, I think there was a whole lot of stuff in the 80s that we were still wearing in the 90s. So that's like all of those Body Shop oils.
Oh,
we
yeah,
still thought all
that's
of
exactly
those
what I
Body
was
Shop
gonna
oils
say,
we still thought were
actually.
very cool. There was a Dewberry one and a White Musk one that I was still wearing well into the early 90s. And even when I was finally made it to London and I'd kind of discovered perfume, a load of my friends were still wearing White Musk from the Body Shop, even though it was like considerably 80s. We hadn't moved on that much.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to say. I was actually just going to bring up the Body Shop because I know they're earlier than the 90s, but so in Brighton there was a big Body Shop store on North Road or North Street, and it was like in the 90s. It was like, I don't think it was a cool place, but it was like it was busy.
Yeah, it was
heaving. Do you know what I mean? It was always busy. And I know my mum was quite into Body Shop perfumes and oils and stuff. So I don't think I could probably pin down any like particular scent.
There was a vanilla oil that smelled like plastic
but
doll's
my family
heads.
wore them a lot.
There was a White Musk that was really heavy, and there was a Dewberry
White
that
Musk
was
you can still get.
sweet.
Yes.
And I had, my best friend used to wear Dewberry right into university, and it was just horrific.
What do we think about Mugler Angel?
You shouldn't wear that.
That's very nice.
Have you tried the Serge Lutard? No.
Mugler Angel,
Yeah.
actually, James, that's before we dismantle that one at all, that is my wife's favourite perfume.
But that's the thing, that my friend who stopped wearing Dewberry, she stopped wearing it because she started wearing Angel.
Nice. I still like it. I mean, maybe it's because my wife wears it that I like it, but I think it's great.
No, I've just
do you have an
put into a
opinion on it,
search
James?
90s perfumes, and I'm just whizzing through them. It's got Millesime Imperial here, which I'm just going to put it out there. Creed wasn't even around in the fucking 90s. The lying fuckers.
No. Creed was established in the 1400s by William.
So
Creed
anyway, that
the
must be
Younger.
wrong.
Absolute fucking horse shit.
Just quick, has anyone looked up the note listing for Mugler Angel?
I can do that.
Is it bullshit?
No, there's loads.
Isn't it just like patchouli
I think
and
it's
something?
Yeah.
No, there's about 70 odd notes. I mean, there's an entire grocery shop. Like
Yeah, there is. Cotton candy, coconut,
like a Spirit
cassis,
of Dubai
melon,
perfume?
jasmine,
Have you-
bergamot, pineapple, mandarin orange, honey, red berries, blackberry, plum, apricot, peach, jasmine, orchid, nutmeg, caraway,
no, it hasn't
rose,
got any
lily of the
that
valley,
shit in.
patchouli, chocolate,
You can sort of
caramel,
fade him out and
vanilla,
then sort of fade him back in
tonka
about
bean,
10
amber,
minutes.
musk, and
Still
sandalwood.
reading.
It's incredible, isn't it? It's, yeah.
That's quite
I've
a lot
never
of
liked
loads.
it. I never liked it then, and I don't like it now. I
tell
feel
you
like
what
a
Mugler
complete
reminds me of.
charlatan, or not a charlatan, but just an idiot, just a twat. Because I know that it's really well loved and all the flankers are loved.
I used to love it. I don't know why I hate it now, but I've told my mum, like, stop wearing it. And basically, she moans about everything that I wear. So I basically, she loved Lipstick Rose by Frederick Mahle. And I was like, do you want this? Because it's fucking expensive, but I'll get it, yeah. So I got it for her, and she wears that every day now, right? But she just to stop her from wearing Angel, because I used to like that like sweetness, and I get that it's a landmark in perfumery, and it really brought a lot of things. And I think we've touched on it before that, you know, it was a big deal. And I did used to like it. I used to really like how full on it was and stuff. But something about it now, I'm just like, nah. The patchouli and the whole, it's just really screechy, and I just hate it. Very candied and just horrible.
Well, it's definitely not an everyday perfume. But Mugler Amen came out in 96, I think it says here. And I remember getting that and being terribly pleased with myself. Sort of, smelling of... it's sort of chocolatey. Or at least I thought it smelled chocolatey. I mean, it's something else, I don't know. But
it was the patchouli, wasn't it? Like the sweet patchouli.
Yeah. But I really...
Here's
really
another one
liked
that I think
one
Fliss
at the time.
might be knowledgeable about. I do remember trying it and just thinking it was a kind of meh, sort of musky, kind of almost that slightly sun creamy sort of thing. But Noah by Cacharel. It's got a beautiful bottle. Do you remember that one?
I do remember it, but by that point I'd moved, with the help of my friend who used to work in the Debenhams. I'd moved to
Fancy as shit. Yeah.
Givenchy and YSL. So I remember at that point, even though these aren't 90s perfumes, she'd given me a bottle of Half Empty Y by YSL. She'd given me a bottle of Amarige by Givenchy. She'd given me some Trésor, and I had like anything. If you could, I'd literally, and this is embarrassing to say, but I had already transitioned to the if you can buy it in Boots, I don't.
Well, if
kind of place,
well,
which is awful.
What's interesting about this one as well is that it was made by Olivier Cresp, who, I mean, had a lot of hits in the 90s, and he did also make Angel as well. I think he did, didn't he? Yeah, he did. So
it was very, very popular.
Yeah. It's a pretty bottle, that's all.
I tell you,
on the Amarige note, I do remember coming back from a party. You know, we were still at that point where our parents would pick us up from a party. We went to the party and then they would pick us up at like midnight or whatever. I remember getting into the car and my mum saying, "Have you been smoking?" And she was intimating, you know, like marijuana. "Have you been smoking something, Flissy?"
Have you been smoking
that kind
puff?
of jazz cigarettes, darling. That kind of feel. And I remember saying, "No, Mum, it's Amarige de Givenchy."
So, do you know, like my dad, right, had that conversation with me about like alcohol and drugs and things, right? Well, drugs mainly, right? And I was 17. I went to a music festival. First time I went to a music festival, and my dad like took me aside before I left the house, like had my like tent on my back, and I was ready to go, like, you know, wide-eyed. Smoked a little bit of marijuana, and that was about it. And my dad said to me, "Right, before you go, I need to have a sit down, proper chat." He's like, "You got my number, and you know you can call me no matter what." He said, "But when you go to this festival, you're going to have a great time. You're going to probably take a lot of different things, but don't try not to take LSD, because a bad trip in a field is a terrible idea." And I was like 17, and I was like, okay, Dad. like literally, like smoked a little bit of solids here and there. That was about it, right? And my dad was like telling me,
stuff.
try not to do it. It didn't even say don't. He said try not to because a bad trip in a field is a terrible idea. And I was just like,
oh, I love your dad.
And if you came back and you had done, you could have said, Dad, look, I tried.
That is classic advice.
You only said try not to. And that sort of implies that your dad might like a bit of a dabble. Yeah. And he might be like, look, as long as you do it in the safety of our home, then it's fine.
that was always their attitude, to be honest. And my dad was a bit of a hippie, so but to talk about perfume, like the one that I hated that was very
try and keep it relevant.
Well,
acid boy.
And sort of going back to Dan's the girls at my school, and I hated it, and I thought it was so fucking basic even then, was Tommy Girl. It was just, I hated that perfume. And it was so many girls at my school wore it, and I fucking hated it. It used to drive me up the wall. But conversely, I did actually quite like the Tommy, like for him. I actually quite liked that. But I hated Tommy Girl. It was so sweet.
I bought that in the 90s.
Well, in comparison to the saccharine stuff that's out now,
no,
it's like
it isn't at all.
It's like Tartar's all shit.
Isn't that weird how you'd think that, but then it's gone completely turbocharged now and all this like bubblegum bullshit. No, funnily enough, Tommy is one that I do remember from the 90s. I remember it came out in 95, I think. And I'd been on a school trip and I was in France. And it was that thing of, when you didn't have much money and you could like own a bit of like, because the Tommy Hilfiger clothes were everywhere. They were quite gaudy and shit, weren't they? Everyone had those big like tops with the big fucking red and white squares on.
The shell suit jackets that were like,
they had like the
red
Tommy
and half
thing on the arm
on
and stuff.
And
all that. And it was like, even if I didn't want, because I was like, they're a bit tacky, those, but it kind of like buy into the brand. And I actually really like the perfume. And it's this kind of weird sort of apple, aquatic thing of the 90s sort of thing. And it also smells kind of a little bit like Matey Bubble Bath. It's got that sort of like vibe to it. So I really liked it.
Matey Bubble, what?
It's a little bit like that, like a kind of appley Matey Bubble
marine seaman.
And I remember being on a ferry and going over to France, and they had it all stacked up, and it was literally like the day it came out or whatever. And I just remember thinking, that's very precarious for a choppy sort of sea journey to have. And they were stacked up, in a massive pyramid. I was like, fucking hell, like that just takes one, like, slightly half cut person and a bit of fucking, a bit of choppy sea, and that's going over that thing. So, anyway, and I bought it, but I saved up because I went to, and I was like, I've got this much money. Am I going to be able to buy it on the way home? And I was able to. And that's like quite a big sort of memory of that time. And yeah, so that was one that I bought for myself in the 90s. So there you
go. Nice. I did ask on the Facebook group for sort of perfumes of choice, and there were a few. So Boss Bottled came up several times. So I don't want to sound like a cunt. Well, I don't care if I sound like a cunt. But
why stop now, darling?
Yeah.
I was going to say.
Oh, well, touche. I want to sound like... No. I've always hated that perfume. It's always been a sort of nothing perfume to me. I've always thought it was shit. And it seemed to... Maybe it came out towards the end of the 90s, perhaps. I don't know. I haven't checked the date. But do you know that thing where you're still sort of listening to the same music that you were when you were about 18, right? You sort of get locked a little bit into a time warp. That's not to say you don't listen to other stuff, but there's always going to be that core that's like, that's my sort of musical identity or whatever. I think there's a little bit of it for me was like that perfume, I think, came out just when I already decided who I was. And so it was shit. So I didn't need it because it didn't sort of, I don't know, it didn't seem to add anything to my sort of, it's a self kind of analysis.
Yeah, no, it totally does. I totally was constantly reinventing myself through perfume and clothes. I used to, all my friends were like wearing like they were quite gothy and like, you know, pulling their cardigans down over their thumbs and all of that stuff. And I was like trawling
thumbhole
vintage shops or secondhand shops and wearing like really brightly coloured stuff, and then wearing and trawling through Tatler and trying to find out. There was a certain look that I was aspiring to, and that my smell totally was about aspiring to that. And I went through so many different smells in order to get to that place. But yeah, I was very much experimenting with how to be.
Well, it's interesting to reminisce and then go, I'm not that person anymore. Do you know what I mean? And be like, that was me, but it ain't me anymore. And yeah, it's interesting. Just on that, I mean, I'm looking at these 90s perfumes. Dan, you always go on about Givenchy Xeris Rouge as being one. That's a 90s one. Was that one you had in the 90s?
Yeah. I didn't have it. I have it now. It's a perfume that I discovered
I think I knew
later on.
That's why I kind of loaded that question there.
But yeah, that was... I wish I'd been into it. I would have. I think I would have been a much cooler person than I was. But yeah.
Going back to Boss though, I distinctly remember, like at that. For me, like Calvin Klein was the fucking coolest, right? Like in by mid-90s,
arguably the 90s,
it kind of hierarchy.
Was the brand of the 90s, wasn't it? You know, in everything.
And I was so into that, like heroin chic, androgyny. Like, you know, for me as well, it called out to me because I've always been small and skinny. And so for me, I just saw it as like, hey,
finally,
I can play to my strengths here. I can be that without very much effort. And I can suddenly be fucking cool, right?
Lazy Ben.
Exactly. So like for me, like Calvin, like the hierarchy, like Calvin Klein was fucking cool. And Ralph Lauren was like, okay, like, you know, I liked sport, but that was it. And then Boss Bottled, I remember smelling the perfume and thinking, I don't really much like this. And then, so I went to like the Hugo Boss shop in Brighton and it was just all suits. And I just remember thinking like, this is for old men, and just like fucking off out. And so like, that was it for me. Like Boss Bottled, that was it. It was just, it's for duff old men, not interested. And that was like, in my kind of like teenager brain, that was the hierarchy. It was like Calvin Klein, fucking cool. Ralph Lauren, yeah, that's okay.
Well,
Boss,
I think
like, that's
Boss
not just not interested.
That I've ever really loved is the Boss, what's now called Number One, but was I think just called Boss for Men then. And I don't think I discovered that until what must have been about 2001, 2002, something. So I mean, it must have already been an old perfume by that point. So yeah, I think I sort of the 90s. I got away with that.
Isn't it funny how like that CK like logo was iconic, and the kind of minimalism of the CK, but generally the clothes I remember as not being. They were quite that sort of like heroin chic, almost like grungy, or it was like preppy, but like not as preppy as like Ralph Lauren. It was kind of like, and the only kind of logo was the band of the underpants like sticking up above the thing. That was the branding of the C. That was where Calvin Klein's actually the name was, and isn't that funny that it was like that kind of thing, you know? And like. Waistband, yeah, exactly. Mark Wahlberg, fucking Marky Mark and his,
funky bunch. What didn't Kate Moss Kate Moss front a lot of the CK stuff? And that's definitely skinny chic there, right? I mean,
that whole kind of like late. Sort of like 96, 97, like heroin chic, skinny supermodels. Really like
Train Spotting. Train Spotting came out about then, didn't it? Yeah. Glamorizing heroin. Mm-hmm. I got into heroin for a bit after that. I was like dead cool. Yeah, no, I didn't. Just if anyone, especially if my mum's listening, I definitely did not. I don't know why I said it. Other perfumes. Jazz.
I think Jazz came out in late 80s though, didn't it? I think I just checked it out.
It must have.
But
by the 90s,
boyfriend at the time, my first boyfriend, who I was with from the age of 14 to the age of 18, he wore Jazz, and I thought it was like
Is anyone else wondering whether or not they need to report this to the
just for being
authorities
so
or something?
sensible. But I remember those adverts of jazz and the smell of it, and just being like, that's the boy for me. That is absolutely.
But jazz was
So
always
cool.
the perfume that was in like the discount. Like it was always like cheapy in the supermarket.
It was in the Argos catalogue. Do you remember you could get fragrances in the Argos catalogue? Yeah.
It was in the Argos. Was it? Really?
Only a few. They only had a handful
Jazz
of
was in the
perfumes. They were
Argos
all
catalogue.
like, staples, like your CK1 and stuff like that.
Jazz, and he wore jazz and I wore exclamation, which was also a 1988 release, and we were like black and white bottles,
like zoot suits, zoot
exclamation is like a Sophia Grossman. That was one of her early Sophia Grossman things, and we were like black and white bottles, black and white. You were just like, we're so cool, we're so.
I'll tell you one here that
he was head boy and I was head girl. It was awful.
Hermione, come on,
No, you wankers. Get fucked. I swear to God, I would have hated you.
I turned up to my GCSEs and got told, and I would be like, what we doing then? And my mates would be like, oh, it's maths. And I had to go home and get a calculator. I legged it home to get a calculator before the exam started. So I didn't know what I was there for. Polar opposite.
Oh, Ben, that
And yet
actually
here we are
comes
talking
as
about
no
smells.
surprise at all. Yeah. Go on, James. I think you had another one for us there.
I never really came across. I'd seen it. I don't think I'd ever tried it until very much later after the 90s. But it was Laura Biagiotti. What's it called? Roma Uomo.
Oh, she did Roma and she did
Yeah.
Venezia.
Roma.
And I remember having a bottle of Venezia and thinking I was the coolest bitch ever. And the boyfriend, this head boy person, when we took our year off, we went to Venice together in our year off. And I wore Laura Biagiotti Venezia, and I thought I was the coolest girl. Well, he was on a drawing course. He'd gone to Venice to do, and Venice and Florence to do a drawing course. And when the drawing course had finished, I went out and we spent 6 weeks in Italy together.
See, that's amazing. So my girlfriend and I went to Amsterdam and got fucked.
We didn't do. We were so not. I didn't get fucked up until the 2000s.
So
You talk to me in the 2000s, and then we'll have chats. But at that point, I was straight as a die.
Wow, that is amazing. I didn't realise that was quite so old. I mean, I think I only tried that perfume for the first time about 2 years ago or something, where I picked it up for, I think, like
Venezia is actually really hard to get hold of now in the original bottles, because I tried for ages to get some, and then I think, who was it on the group's lovely? I think it might have even been Claire Bradshaw might have sent me some a couple of years ago. Sent me the last dregs of her bottle of Venezia, and I hadn't smelt it in years, and it's actually quite expensive to get hold of on eBay now. In the original bottles, not the new stuff's shit, but the vintage Roma and the vintage Venezia. Yeah, very.
There was some good Boucherons, a couple of men's ones, a couple of women's ones actually in the 90s as well, which were really good.
Do you know what? I don't think I've even ever tried any. I think I've tried. What's the sort of Jaipur? That's the one. Yeah, Jaipur. I've tried. I think only one.
Yeah,
there's an EDT
I'd say
and
they're
an
much the same, but I couldn't.
And I think
stand to that, But
okay. Well, I'm sure I tried the one that people generally regard as being the shitter one.
Which one's the shitter one?
And
right.
It was I don't know, I can't remember. So what
The
generally
EDT,
people
I think,
regard
maybe.
as, that's the one I tried. I don't know, but okay, quite possibly. But it didn't leave a mark on me. But again, that was a perfume that I don't think I tried in the 90s. Yeah. It may well have been there, and I don't think I quite enjoyed perfumes, and I certainly had several, but I don't think I was like in the Fliss school of like actively going out and seeking them out as something to.
Here's one you'll have definitely tried in the 90s, which was Pour Homme by Dolce & Gabbana.
Oh yeah.
That's quintessential 90s stuff. It came out in 94.
Yeah.
And my mates had it. I had it. Yeah. It was a big one.
Yeah. So I don't know whether I've told you my story about that one, but when I got my first job, which it was 90s. It was 98. And I moved in. I shared a flat with my best mate from school, and it was a disaster because he, you should never
live with your best friend.
Move in with your mates. It's a nightmare. But he had terrible personal hygiene, but would apply huge quantities of Dolce & Gabbana Pour Homme in order to compensate for this. And so it's kind of my abiding... I really like that perfume, but every time I smell it, it's got this fucking unwashed undertone. It just smells like someone's applied this as
Isn't that funny that your brain is doing that? Because that's not what's happening, but yeah.
It's fucked.
See, that's Lynx Africa for me, because obviously being at school and everyone just drowning themselves in Lynx Africa, a bunch of teenage boys.
Yeah, it is exactly
the same
Lynx
thing.
Africa.
This Lizzie Ostrom book has got a chapter on impulse body sprays for girls, and I remember before even the people that didn't have perfume had a little bottle of impulse in their sports bag.
They made those little thin, purse sort of size.
Yeah, totally.
Ones,
and there was a vanilla that
Mm.
everybody had, and there was like a green one called O2, which is vaguely like the girly, sporty version. And I just even if you didn't wear perfume at school, everybody had a bottle of Impulse.
Didn't they have all those shitty TV adverts where the girl would wear Impulse and then some dude would sort of end up running after
in the same
her
way.
and giving her flowers
It was like
shit.
the Lynx adverts, but like in the exact opposite.
In reverse. Yeah, fucking bad. The 90s was in retrospect quite a bad decade. Okay, well, I mean, I see a lot of yawning going on, so I'm feeling kind of
there's a lot we can talk about in the 90s, really, but it's probably best to maybe draw it to a close.
Maybe not.
I'm just looking through. We could go into some of the niche things that came out in the 90s, but to be honest, like I say, I probably didn't discover them until the 2000s. But
so we should do stuff that was, I think, talking about the 90s, it doesn't have to have been built in the 90s. It has to be some relevant in the 90s, and I think again similarly we'll do the 2000s. But the one thing I will say about the 90s, and I know people of our generation are fond of saying this, but I will never get tired of the fact that we did not have everything we said and did committed to fucking digital memory back then. It's, sometimes I'd love to be able to see some pictures of us, in the clubs or whatever, like out with our mates, and, I have a vague memory of some really good nights, and maybe it'd be good to see a few pictures. But on balance, I am fucking glad that we did not get every waking thought and moment documented for posterity, and saved into 7,000 different digital clouds so that it was unremovable. Kids today have got
you'd have been well and truly cancelled by now. Yeah.
I don't have to worry about my Snapchat.
Yeah.
Oh fuck! We all would. It was it was a very different time. Although it was the start. I think. It was an interesting time. There was a lot of I think progress, certainly towards the late 90s in the UK. After 97, the Labour landslide and stuff, and. The sort of I think a lot of progress was then made late 90s to the 2000s in a lot of very positive ways. But there was a lot of negative shit in the 90s.
I've still got the same. I've still got the same mobile phone number that I went to university with in the 90s. I remember getting a mobile phone.
Oh, I had a pager.
Well, I had a pager first too. In my first year, I had a pager. In the second year, I got a mobile phone. And my mobile, I had one of those Nokia ones, and then I had one of those clamshell ones. But
only drug dealers had mobile phones.
But I still have the same number. And I always think that's like,
wow,
you've come a long way, Fliss.
Well, with the addition of a 7,
Fliss, in terms of what your phone does, but your number's still the same. There's that thread of us still there.
What were you going to say, Ben?
Go on, Ben.
I was just going to say, like, even like some of the lads mags that we were talking about, lads mags that we were talking about, like you know, they were, a lot of them were quite self-aware, and I do think there was like you know, it's easy to point fingers now and say, oh, they were like sexist and all that, but I think a lot of them were very self-aware, and I think actually a lot of them shaped me as a teenager to be more aware of women and gender and all of those kind of things, like through those magazines, really, like just being more aware of like gender issues or gender identity. Even. Like,
I remember reading GQ at university and preferring GQ to Vogue, and I remember thinking that GQ was cooler than Vogue, and reading GQ and thinking, yeah, actually, the discourse in there was much more emotionally mature. Dan's laughing. He's like, you went GQ at university.
I remember reading Loaded magazine, which you could say was probably the most
what more than nuts
one. But
come on,
nuts. Loaded and FHM.
But do you know what I credit Loaded for? Was
that was short-lived, I think.
But Loaded, I credit for awakening me to the concept that you should go down on women and teaching me how to do it as well. And like as a 15-year-old sitting there waiting for my cricket captain to arrive to take me to cricket, reading it, thinking like, you do,
and he's still using those techniques to this day.
But you know, like. But the thing is but I know it's kind of crass and funny and all the rest of it. But the point is those magazines, you know, like that. If you think about it, you know, that's trying to, you know, is that not sort of making you slightly more sexually aware?
He's blushing. Georgina, he is blushing right the way to his temples.
No, I was trying to wrap the show up, but you know, like
let's all do our position of the week,
saves his
and then you can say goodbye.
Bombshell for yeah, amazing. Right, well, on that bombshell,
well, I've learned.
Anything else anyone wants to add very quickly before
you have to kiss her on the pussy occasionally. I learned that from Loaded magazine. No, but basically, I think it's been a great discussion, and I've really enjoyed it.
He's holding his head in his hand.
I've really enjoyed it.
Family show.
I've really enjoyed it because, like, it was totally unprepared. Like, you know, Fliss was like, "Oh, I'm excited about this," and I was kind of like, "Yeah, I am," but it was very like sort of last minute. But it's been great. You know, I think we've rounded a lot of, you know, various bases and things, and we've come to a great sort of consensus again.
a great consensus. Yeah. We come to an enormous climax.
Yeah, which is how we started with me and Henry Jacques.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. We have gone full circle. Henry Jacques was taking notes.
We're just sexual beings.
Right, on that slightly odd
four fucking horn dogs.
It sounds like you're going to break into song. Horn dogs. Oh my god, please fucking god, let me finish this show.
Just let him talk about fragrance, everybody. Just say something about frags.
I just want to talk
about... So I always think like that. The perfume in the 90s. No, this is about perfume, right? And it's quite...
really?
I wonder like how much of my perfume likes in the 90s were direct, like, sort of rejection of my parents' stuff as well, because I know you're trying to wrap this up and this might but my parents wore opium and Kuros, right? And so, like, if you think all the perfumes that I was into was just such a push against those sort of fragrances, right? That I used to smell my parents and think, oh, they smell so rubbish. You're not wearing CK1. Like, you know, but they was almost like a rejection against those sort of big, opulent things, weren't they?
I reject my parents. I am teenager. Hear me roar.
with my light aquatic scent.
It's my light aquatic androgynous scent. Yes. Well, I don't know, and I feel like if we had a chaise longue and several hours,
or a
we could probably lie
banquette.
you on it and get into it, but we don't. A banquette, yeah, exactly. Probably slide right off that one though. Right, it's. Shut up. Okay, I'm not even going to ask if anyone else has got anything else to say because I don't care. We will be back. If I can get these dickheads to behave, we will be back in 2 weeks on Less Essence. Catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.